네, 반갑습니다. 코로나 이후에 벌써 4월 말, 6월 달, 또 9월, 12월까지 지금 계속 코로나 19 문제 때문에 우리 세계 전기차 패밀리들이 함께 할 수 있는 기회가 상당히 어렵게 진행이 되고 있습니다. 그래서 12월 전기차 엑스포 하기 전에 미리 이사회와 총회를 마무리하고 12월에 지금처럼 비대면 글로벌 EV 라운드 테이블로 다시 만나도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 우리 보드 멤버이신 미국의 야코보 사마시 공동 조직위원장님과 옆에 계시는 우리 제주대학교 이계명 학장님, 또 우리 홍콩에서, 부탄에서, 또 필리핀 아르가 회장님, 또 인도네시아의 뮬류 유도도 회장님, 그리고 미얀마의 코코양 회장님, 또 스산다 회장님, 또 베트남의 뚜안 회장님, 그리고 태국의 크리스다 회장님 새롭게 선출되셨죠. 그리고 말레이시아의 데니시 첸 회장님, 그리고 영국의 또 덴마크에 지금 함께 총회에 참여해서 해주시고 계시고요. 오늘 이 자리까지 진행하는 과정에 블룸버그 NEF의 알리 대표가 이따 기조 발제를 하겠습니다마는 저희들한테 패밀리로서 지속 가능하게 힘을 함께 해주고 있어서 알리 대표한테 다시 한번 고맙다는 말씀을 드리겠습니다. 그리고 오늘 수고해 주시는 최용철 우리 위원장님도 대한전기학회 전기자동차 연구회에 이번에 위원장으로 새로 선출되셔가지고 앞으로 여러분들과 글로벌 EV 어소시에이션 네트워크 패밀리들이 함께 하는데 큰 힘이 되지 않겠냐 하고 기대를 하고 있고요. 오늘 큰 선물이 또 한 가지 또 말씀드릴 글로벌 EV 라운드 테이블에서 스페셜 스피커로 함께해 주시는 우리 ADB 아시아 개발은행 김기준 박사님께서 그동안 우리 아세안 패밀리들과 함께 고민했던 과제를 하나 저희들하고 공동 주최하기로 해서 세계 전기차 협회 GEAN에게 용역을 하나 주셨습니다. 그래서 그 내용은 이따가 글로벌 EV 라운드 테이블을 할 때 김성균 사회자께서 코멘트를 좀 해주시고요. 김기준 박사님이 직접 말씀을 해주실 겁니다. 여러분 모쪼록 우리가 이런 코로나 전국을 이겨가는 세계에서 모든 엑스포나 박람회나 다 취소됐습니다. 우리 글로벌 EV 패밀리들은 전쟁이 나도 어떤 고통이 와도 우리는 전기차의 다보스 포럼은 항상 한다. 언제나 한다. 그래서 세계에서 유일하게 2020년도에 개최하는 국제 행사로서 여러분들과 12월 9, 10, 11일 날 또 마무리하도록 하겠습니다. 감사하다는 말씀을 드리고 자세한 내용들은 계속 의사소통을 하도록 하겠습니다. 고맙습니다.
Thank you for your opening remarks. And let me briefly show you the timetable that we're going to follow today. Right after his remarks, I am going to give you a little update on our activities, which is going to be until 10:15. After that, we are going to have some discussion because the chairman, Mr. Kim, have some idea about energizing this GEAN activities by organizing a couple of subcommittees. So we are going to have a little discussion about that later on. And after that, we will have a third EV roundtable discussion starting from 10:40. Okay, let me move on to the activity report page. There's a little time delay here. Okay, one more page. Okay, we're here. Okay, even with all this pandemic difficulties, we've done quite a few things. In 2019, March 29, Vietnam EV Forum was organized, and it was held in Hanoi. And after that, 2019, May 7, fourth general meeting of GEAN was held at Jeju. So we continue to move, continued our activities throughout those 2019 very actively. However, I mean, after that, continued after that, in May 10th, second AV Global Investment Forum was organized in Jeju. June 7 of 2019, IEV Tech 2019, and at the same time, GEAN EV Forum was held in Bangkok together. Again, July 17th, 7th Philippine Electric Vehicle Summit was organized in Manila, and we participated in that conference. And November 5th, third EV and AV Global Investment Forum was organized in Seoul, and it was successfully carried out. And November 14th, first global EV roundtable discussion was held in Seoul, Korea, and that was very, very pleasant experience. And only 2020, I mean, due to this pandemic situation, we were forced to cancel or delay our meetings and activities by a lot, but still we were able to manage it to organize a second global EV roundtable meeting in July 2nd in Seoul. And a month ago, in September 24th, 8th Philippine EV Virtual Summit was organized and successfully managed in Philippines. I know that Mr. Edmund Araga did a lot of work to make that event successful, and that was probably the first online our EV-related event around this area. Okay, this will kind of summarize our activities, but again, as you see, in 2019, we did a lot of meetings and gatherings to make this organization successful. However, we had only 2 virtual meetings in 2020. Looks like we will have to live with this COVID-19. I mean, I don't think it's gonna go away completely, so we will, one way or another, have to find a way to organize these meetings virtually, and we will have to find a way to make this meeting successful under the situations. Okay, this will finalize our activity report, and then I'm going to move on to the next page. Okay, this one, Mr. Chairman was very, very interested in publishing the printing the publication under the name of EV. And now we are publishing the monthly magazine, which is dedicated only to EV, energy, and smart grid. As you can see, these magazines are circulated among the government offices and colleges and libraries and everywhere, and also sold by subscription. And if you guys are also interested in getting all these magazines, you may contact the GEAN office so that you can get it. And also, we are getting the manuscript or articles for this magazine from everywhere. For example, we're getting some manuscript from China, also from Philippines, and those articles from foreign countries are printed in their own languages, okay? Sometimes in English, sometimes in Chinese directly, so that they can have their own articles print. They would feel more comfortable reading those articles in their own languages. That's what we're trying to do. Let me move on to the next page. 잘못돼 있구나. Let me move backwards. Oh, okay. One of the important events that we want to carry out today is the GEAN award session, and we have gotten a recommendation about 10. Sorry, I can't read those letters. Those letters are too fine. Oh, okay. From about 10 candidates, we received the accomplished report, and then the organizers of this award board meeting, they selected 3 final candidates for the 2020 Plaque of Appreciation. The winners are, as you can see on this page, the first one is GM. The second winner is Renault, and the third one is Bloomberg New Energy Finance. And we are going to give the award now. 우리 어워드를 드리는 거예요? 아니면?
아니 이제 올해 소개만 시키고요. 이제 내년 거 제가 말씀드리니까 소개만 올해 이렇게 선정된 소개만.
Yeah, for this year's winner, GM, Renault, and Bloomberg New Energy Finance, they were selected, and then the actual plaque will be delivered to them directly later on. But today we are just going to announce their names here. Okay, let me move on to the next page. Okay, this is a kind of table for the discussion. What I'd like to introduce to you is a little organization chart here. We have Global EV Association Network Secretariat Office in Jeju Island. What we're trying to do is here, we want to organize a different subcommittees. For example, EV Development Platform Committee, or Service Industry Committee, Energy Committee. The reason why we're trying to organize this subcommittee is to energize the effort which we are trying to accomplish through this GEAN meeting, and we want to make it more specific depending on the interests of the participating members. And these 3 subcommittees are initially kind of suggested, but we are willing to hear from you any comments or suggestions about the committee names or any idea about this committee organizations. And 그다음에 저거 하실 거죠? And before we actually hear your ideas, we would like to give you a little report about the rules. I mean, the rules, how we're going to organize all these things. Okay? 말씀해 주실래요?
네, 안녕하십니까? 저는 저희 전기자동차 엑스포의 법률 분야 파트너십을 체결한 법무법인 신행킴의 황성익 변호사라고 합니다. 체어먼 김대현 위원장님으로부터 제가 부탁받은 것은 우리가 GEAN인데 이 GEAN의 목적과 퍼포먼스를 향상시키기 위해서 어떤 세부적인 커미티들이 있으면 좋겠는가 하는 부분이었고요. 그래서 이하에서 제가 구상한 바를 초안으로서 제시를 하려고 하니까 잘 들어주시고 여러 가지 의견들 주시면 감사하겠습니다. 네, 발표 순서는 먼저 우리 GEAN 사무국 세크레테리엇이 법인으로서 지금 제주도에 설립되어 있는데요. 우리가 지금 누구인지에 대해서 간단히 살펴보고 두 번째로는 과거의 보도자료 등에 나타난 기초적인 구상들이 있었습니다. 그래서 과거에 논의됐던 그런 커미티에 대한 이야기를 잠깐 한 다음에 우리는 어소시에이션 네트워크로서 한국에도 코리아 EV 어소시에이션이 멤버인데 이 코리아 EV 어소시에이션도 커미티를 구성하고 있습니다. 다른 나라들에서도 역시 비슷한 기능을 수행하는 커미티들이 있을 텐데요. 사례로서 제시를 하고 마지막으로 그렇다면 우리 GEAN의 그 초안으로서의 커미티들의 내용을 간단히 발표해 드리겠습니다. 지금 저희는 GEAN으로서 이렇게 모여 있는데 법인으로 한국의 리걸 엔티티로는 그 사무국이 이제 제주도에 설치가 돼 있는데 이름에서 알 수 있듯이 우리는 글로벌입니다. 그래서 각국의 멤버 협회들이 지금 모여 있는 것이고요. 그리고 우리는 어소시에이션입니다. 각 나라의 로컬 레벨에서의 정부, 학계, 그리고 산업 여러 사람들이 연결되어 있습니다. 그리고 그러한 멤버들이 서로 네트워킹을 구성하고 있는 것입니다. 그렇다면 우리 GEAN은 바로 전기자동차에 관련된 여러 이해관계자들 그리고 전기자동차 보급을 확산시키려는 사람들의 플랫폼이라고 생각이 됩니다. 과거에 여러분들 이미 논의하셨겠지만 저희가 보도자료에 나온 저희들의 커미티 구상들이 이미 있었습니다. 그 내용을 살펴보면 이 테크니컬 애스펙트와 관련해서는 이 표준위원회가 구상이 됐었고요. 그리고 인더스트리얼 이코시스템 관련해서 산업적인 측면에서는 EV의 제조, 보급, 그리고 다른 산업 분야와의 컨버전스 등 여러 맥락들이 있을 수 있는데 그런 측면에서 서비스 산업위원회를 구상을 하셨고 기본적으로 또 GEAN의 대외 활동을 위해서 퍼블릭 릴레이션스 커미티를 구상했었다라는 내용을 저희가 언론 보도에서 봤습니다. 지금 방금 세 가지 위원회는 아주 기초적인 내용으로 생각이 되는데요. 여기서 한번 사례로서 한국전기자동차협의회는 관련된 홈페이지와 자료들을 보면 이렇게 5가지의 세부 위원회를 구상하고 있습니다. 첫째는 팔러스 리서치 앤 디벨롭먼트 측면이고 두 번째는 전기자동차 그 자체의 보급과 서비스 그리고 핵심 부품인 배터리와 기타 부품들에 대한 위원회 그리고 어떤 사회적 엔지니어링 시스템의 측면에서는 충전과 인프라스트럭처에 대한 위원회 그리고 마지막으로는 PR 그리고 마케팅에 대한 위원회가 구성이 되어 있습니다. 그래서 이 내용은 한국 전기자동차 글자가 작아서 죄송한데 하단 부분에 결국 우리는 GEAN으로서 글로벌 네트워크인데 한국 로컬 차원에서의 협의회에서도 5개 정도의 위원회가 구성이 돼 있습니다. 그래서 저는 향후에 이 디스커션을 이어갈 목적으로는 각 멤버 어소시에이션에 비슷한 기능을 수행하는 커미티들이 이미 있으실 거라고 생각이 되는데 그런 부분들의 사례들도 모아서 최종 결정할 때는 참고하는 것을 제안드리고 싶었습니다. 네. 자, 그러면 다시 이제 우리 GEAN에 어떤 커미티들이 있으면 이런 제너럴 미팅 외에 각 커미티에서 활동들을 더 열심히 하고 잘할 수 있을까 생각해 보면 저는 다시 근본으로 돌아오면 된다고 생각합니다. 그래서 살펴본 바 저희가 존재하는 백그라운드를 저희 홈페이지에도 밝히고 있는데요. 여기에는 핵심적인 단어들이 있습니다. 전기자동차를 대상으로 하고 단순히 전기자동차를 만들어 판매하는 부분이 아니라 전 세계적인 기후변화 위기에 대응한다는 측면이 있고 그거를 위해서 상호 간의 정보를 쉐어하고 그리고 그 기능들이 잘 수행될 수 있는 플랫폼을 구성한다는 백그라운드가 있었고요. 그렇다면 구체적 활동으로 우리들의 목적은 각 멤버 협회들의 각 국가에 존재하는 이 멤버들이 서로 네트워킹하고 협력하고 전기자동차라는 이 첨단의 기구의 비어클에 대해서 표준을 만들고 또 전기자동차가 그 생태계 속에서 잘 다닐 수 있도록 인프라를 구축하는 이런 부분들을 저희의 목적으로 하고 있습니다. 그럼 구체적 활동으로 저희가 수행하는 퍼포먼스, 아까 우리 액티비티 보고 주셨는데요. 밖으로 드러나는 활동들은 어떤 것이냐 하면 국제 행사를 개최하고 리서치와 코오퍼레이션을 하고 또 어치먼트가 좋은 사람들에게는 상도 주고 그리고 메이저 리더즈와의 그 네트워크를 형성하고 그리고 다른 하나 PR적인 측면이지만 문화와 관련된 부분이니까 교육 그리고 여러 가지 그 EV 컨셉 디자인이나 그 국제 학술 대회 이런 부분들이 저희들의 밖으로 드러나는 활동들입니다. 그러면 이 활동들을 더욱더 체계적으로 수행하기 위한 제안을 제가 그림으로 그려봤는데요. 지금 화면이 좀 작으니까 제가 하나하나 읽어보겠습니다. 총 6개 정도의 커미티로 구상을 해보았습니다. 더 설명드리겠지만 이들 상호 간에는 서로 인터섹션이 존재할 수 있고 또 여러 멤버 어소시에이션들에서 생각했을 때 미싱 펑션이 있다고 생각하실 수도 있습니다. 그리고 이 숫자가 지금은 기능별로 나누어 놓은 거기 때문에 서로 간의 콤비네이션을 통해서 기능을 수행하면 되니까 이 커미티의 네임이나 그 개수는 조정될 수 있을 거라고 생각합니다. 그래서 제일 그 상단에 오렌지색으로 있는 부분은 이제 PR 커미티라고 해서 근본적으로 여러 가지 교육 그리고 대외 관계, 마케팅 관련된 커미티는 있어야겠다라는 생각을 했고요. 바로 그 오른쪽에는 국제 협력, 인터내셔널 코오퍼레이션에 대한 부분인데 우리가 각 나라의 멤버들이 모여 있기 때문에 국제 협력이 당연히 필요하다고 볼 수 있습니다만은 거기에 더 나아가서 기후 변화에 대응한다는 측면이 저희가 정책적으로 필요하고 또한 트레이드 이슈를 생각했습니다. 이 무역이라는 부분은 그 각 로컬 나라들의 기준들이 서로 다를 수 있어서 여기서의 국제 협력은 크로스 보더 트레이드 관련된 부분도 다루는 게 필요하겠다라는 생각을 했습니다. 왼쪽 하단은 이제 기술적 측면에서 표준에 관련된 부분인데요. 단순한 표준이 아니라 좀 더 세분화해서는 배터리 그리고 인버터 차징 시스템 그리고 에어 컨디셔닝, 시큐리티 그리고 ICT 컨버전스에 관련된 다양한 분야들이 있는데 거기서 포커스하는 분야를 정해서 이 표준에 대한 부분, 기술적 부분에 대한 논의를 할 수 있는 커미티가 있었으면 좋겠다는 생각을 했습니다. 그리고 다시 왼쪽 하단에는 이제 레귤러터리 커미티라는 부분인데 전기차에 관련된 각종 그 규제들, 인증들 또 안전에 관련된 문제 그리고 제품의 하자가 발생했을 때 프로덕트 라이어빌리티 등 국민 삶에 세상 사람들의 삶에 그 여러 가지 피해가 있을 수도 있고 이로운 점도 있을 수 있는 그 현재 있는 상태로서의 현재의 규제 그리고 이 규제가 앞으로 어떻게 개선돼야 하는지에 대한 이 레귤러터리 커미티가 필요할 거라 생각을 했습니다. 그 오른쪽에는 Policy Research and Development Committee라고 제가 구상을 해봤는데요. 이 부분은 아까 말씀드렸던 그 산업적 생태계를 앞으로 어떻게 우리가 만들어가야 할 왼쪽이 as is라면 앞으로는 as will be로서 어떤 정책 방향에 대한 부분 그리고 다른 산업 분야에 관련해서 정책을 개발하는 이런 연구개발 기능에 대한 커미티가 필요할 거라고 생각을 했습니다. 맨 오른쪽 부분은 신산업 뉴 인더스트리즈 커미티라고 구상을 해봤는데요. 저희 전기자동차는 이게 좋은 플랫폼이고 기술적으로 지금 계속 발전을 거듭하고 있기 때문에 인접된 기술, 예를 들어 자율주행 자동차, 그리고 커넥티드 카, 그리고 차량 상호 간의 통신 등의 여러 그 산업 분야와 접목이 될 수 있어서 역시 그 further discussion은 필요하겠습니다만은 이 신산업 분야로의 커미티를 구상해 봤습니다. 네, 이렇게 6개를 구상해 보았는데 예를 들어 PR과 인터내셔널 코오퍼레이션이 인터섹션이 있을 수 있고요. 그리고 레귤러토리 커미티랑 스탠더다이제이션은 같이 인터섹션이 있을 수 있고 다른 분야에서도 이 교집합은 있을 수 있을 것 같습니다. 그리고 혹시 빠져 있는 부분이 있다면 각국의 멤버 여러분들의 그런 고견을 수집을 해서 최종적으로는 저희가 GEAN 세크레테리어스로서 GEAN의 그 모인 목적에 더 잘 봉사할 수 있는 그런 커미티들을 구성하고 그것이 establish 되도록 계속 노력을 해갔으면 하는 생각에서 저희 김대현 위원장님의 부탁으로 이렇게 한번 제가 구상을 했습니다. 초안입니다. Just drafts. 그래서 여러분들의 인풋이 많이 필요하고 앞으로의 디스커션을 통해서 이 커미티의 그 세부 사항들과 이름들 그리고 각국에서 참여를 해야 되기 때문에 각국 그 주리스딕션별로 로컬별로 또다시 세부 멤버들을 좀 정하는 작업도 필요할 거라 생각합니다. 네, 이상으로 제가 준비한 내용들의 발표는 마치고 여러분들의 디스커션 그리고 이하 라운드 테이블 내용까지 계속 함께 하도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Mr. Huang. As this proposal or this draft it's just a starting point. I know that you guys didn't really realize that we prepared this type of draft already, and kind of we're giving you a little bit of homework so that you can digest after all this after today's meeting. And if you have any suggestions or ideas regarding the organization of these subcommittees, please contact us, and we will work together to make these committees very successful. And as I said, the main reason why we're trying to organize this subcommittee is to make us move with some organized fashion. So please give us any ideas or suggestions later on. And I am going to give you a little bit of advertisement for the upcoming events. As you can see on the screen, towards the end of 2020, which is, hang on, what is the date? Okay, we will have 7th IEVE Expo in Jeju Island, 2020, from December 9 to December 11. So, I mean, I know that it may be difficult for you guys to visit us, actually. However, we are going to organize this expo virtually so that you guys can enjoy the expo in your own countries through the internet. And in 2021, we are going to have 8th IEVE Expo in May, because this year's expo has been delayed, until the end of this year. However, we are going to go back to the original planned date, which is May 4th, from May 4th to May 7th in 2021. And during that, right before the 8th Expo, we are going to have our GEAN 6th general meeting, which is on May 3rd, Monday. And depending on the situation, we are going to invite you over here to Jeju Island, or if this COVID-19 situation does not improve, then we may have to have the meeting virtually like today. Okay, so time is 10:35, and then we are going to have a third EV roundtable starting from 10:40. So we are going to have about 7-minute break here, so that you guys can go to stretch your arms and backs a little bit, and then we will come back at 10:40, and then we'll start the third EV roundtable discussions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Before you move from your table, we are going to have a picture session, because although we're not in the same room, but we are going to have a picture together. As your faces are on the screen, everybody's on, and then we're going to walk. Hi, Edmund.
여기 좀 비춰보세요. Good morning. Hello. 자, 반갑습니다. 자, 우리 이제 사진 한 장부터 찍고 부지런히 찍고 다시 얘기를 나누죠.
오케이, 그럼 자 우리가 앞으로 나가야 되죠?
네.
We are going to
양쪽으로 쓰지 마.
move up to the screen right beside you, and then we will take a picture.
얼른 잠깐 저 지렁이들 나오고 시간이 없어서
카메라를 저분들하고 우리하고 다 이렇게 보이게.
그냥 옆에 이걸 가지지 말고 양쪽으로 우리 황원장님 우리 사장님 쓰셔가지고 V자로 쓰지는. 자, 이러면 이거 다 보이지. 저쪽에서 사진 어떤 누가 찍은 분이 위치를 잡아보세요. 그래서 이게 좀 나와야 되니까 좀 뽑으세요.
우리 모이시는 분 조금만 비워주시죠.
더.
가운데를 비워주시고 네, 옆에 걸리지 말고.
바짝바짝. 그래서 어떻게 좌우 대칭을 대충 보세요. 네.
이현 대표는 저 뒷줄 서도 될 것 같은데 키가 크시죠? 네, 오케이.
자, 그럼 우리 박수나 한번 치고
됐습니다.
됐어요?
네, 됐습니다.
네, 수고하셨습니다.
So we just took the picture. I mean, with you guys on the screen. All right, we will send you the picture later on. Now we will have 5-minute break, and then we are going to start our EV roundtable meeting at 10:40. Okay, we will come back at 10:40. Thank you.
발표를 있어야 되니까 또 김 대표가 사회를 어디서 볼까? 어디 좀 나가서 보던 어디 이쪽에 앉아. 저는 나가거든.
옆에 앉아서.
거기 가서 거기 앉아. 일로 앉으세요.
아니 거기
네.
인사 나가.
나오면 꽂혀.
Mr. Liu Xiaoshu, welcome, welcome. I see your face. When we officially start our meeting, I will introduce you to the group.
Thank you.
刘秘书长
你好。
啊，那可以听到是吧？啊哈哈
Yes.
啊，你好，你好。
小。
应该是最大。哦。
那个可能5分钟以后，然后那个开始，然后您可能是第2位，发表。
好的，没问题。
好的，对。
因为实在太差劲。
把这个门关上。
제가 진행. 아이고 안녕하세요. 네, 반갑습니다. 제가 Right. 여기 지금 목소리 들어가는 거죠?
시간 잘려서 자동차 공부가 과장님 참석하기도 하셔서 못해 했는데 거기 호감도 또 들었대요. 그래서 자동차 공부가
일단 클럽 시간 맞춰 시작되잖아요. 그렇죠. 그거 끝나고 나서
반장님 11월 달에 할 때 우리하고 그때 뭐 어떤 업무 연락 세레모니를 하던 전화도 잘 구상해서
네네. 그래서 아무튼 그렇게 하고 11월 달 행사할 때
11월 달에
그래서 증거 주관하다가 도움 되거든. 돈이
그거 한번 잘 구분해서 이미 이제 시작합니다.
네네.
Okay, we'll be starting in 1 minute. We're gonna start in 1 minute.
처음에 순서가 어떻게 되지?
저희 일단 키노트 스피치 2개 들어가고요. 그 다음에 이제 라운드 테이블 할 건데요. 그 전에 지금 늦게 합류하신 샤오슈를 먼저 소개만 하고 그리고 시작할게요.
누가 좀
Good morning. Did it work? Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I saw your screen.
Yeah, we saw your screen. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
예, 그 시간 됐으면 바로 해야죠. 네.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Seo Kim. I will be in charge for this EB roundtable meeting. I'm actually briefly introduce myself. I was previously working in the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs about 5 years, and I'm leading business development consulting firm called Doing Smart City. And I'm also a member of the GEAN's International Committee. So today is my honor to moderate roundtable sessions, but I have to say we cannot. Our congratulatory speech, Mr. Lee cannot come to the roundtable due to his another private schedule. So I think we have to start from the alley for the e-mobility. But before that, we have another very important guest joined a few minutes ago. So I would like to introduce Xiaoshi Lu from China. Do you want to have one quick word? Xiaoshi, we can't hear you. Yeah.
감사합니다.
Good. Microphone.
from Beijing.
Welcome, Joshua.
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, right. Okay, well, we have one guest speaker is ready, Ali. Are you ready for the keynote speech?
Sure.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Stage is yours.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and good evening, Professor Shamesh. It's very nice to have the opportunity to meet with you again, and also welcome to our new members. It's my great pleasure to present to you a few slides that I put together around the impact of the pandemic on the mobility sector this year, as well as how we see the recovery after the pandemic. Please allow me a moment to set up sharing my slides, and hopefully this will work without any issue. Let's see. Hopefully you can see my slides full screen now.
Yes.
Is that all right?
You can see.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. And in particular, I'm very grateful to Chairman Kim for always giving me the opportunity to share with you the analysis that my colleagues around the world within Bloomberg AEF do. On the pandemic, I don't think I need to remind anyone. So unfortunately, the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, had significant impact on our health, and that has had ramifications for the economy. And also in some countries, unfortunately, there has been political and social unrest. One way to measure the impact of the pandemic on mobility is actually look at the statistics that our cell phones collect. So this one is actually the data that Apple collects from the iPhones around the world. As you can see, some countries are not there just because they don't have the data availability. You can see a lot of red around March and April in many parts of US and Europe. Those red mark lower rates of mobility relative to the previous year. Google has a bit more geographic coverage, so you can see a few more countries on this list. You can see that, for example, in Italy, which was heavily hit right after the pandemic started. You can see that in March, initially in the northern region, Lombardy region, that was hit quite severely, that mobility went down, particularly movement towards workplaces, and then nationally it's expanded. One of the positive notes on this slide, as you can see, is that the statistics for Korea actually show barely any change in terms of movement to workplaces. Of course, this is partly because Korea, thanks to significant infrastructure around contact tracing and testing, was able to essentially avoid having to issue any sort of severe lockdown measures. You can see a similar trend in Japan, although Japan, statistically speaking, still was not able to handle the pandemic as well as Korea has been able to do. We can see similar trends when you look at public transit usage, unfortunately, particularly in Europe, where a lot of people rely on public transport to go to work. The lockdown had severe negative impact. In Asia, the impact was a little bit better. Again, you can see that in Korea and Japan, the statistics were not as bad as what you can see in terms of the red that you see in Europe. Here, for those of you that follow the controversy around the different approaches to the pandemic, you can also see, for example, Sweden didn't have as much of an impact given that they had not implemented as severe measures. Now, if you look at road traffic congestion, and this data is from the statistics that TomTom collects. So this one is not from cell phone data, rather it's from the mapping services that are used by vehicles. You can see the good news that China, the red line, has already recovered. So you can see the road traffic congestion levels now are higher than prior levels. Of course, the downside of that is that basically means that traffic is back. But the good news for that is that for China, which has handled the pandemic very well, and essentially there has been days where there has been 0 new cases, we can see that consumer confidence has come back. You can see that US in particular, the blue line is still struggling quite a bit, and it's far from recovery, unfortunately. These are, of course, statistics around mobility. If you look at the impact on auto manufacturing, what this chart is showing you, this is showing you the number of auto plants that were shut down over the first half of the year, and the colors represent the different geographies. Of course, China implemented very strict lockdown measures from the end of the Chinese New Year period all the way till the middle of April. So you can see the red bars beginning in January, at the end of January. Right after China, the impact of the COVID-19 on auto manufacturing was heavily felt in Korea and Italy. Then it expanded to a few more markets, including Japan. The blue that you see, this is the US impact. And the US impact was more severely felt towards sort of the March-April period. And then by summer, essentially most of the auto manufacturing plants have resumed operation. There are a few still, but for the most part, they have all resumed work. Now, what about sales? And here we're looking at the statistics for the first half of the year, actually the first 7 months. We're looking at July statistics as well. What we're looking at here is comparing auto sales for January to July of this year versus last year. And the first column is looking at passenger vehicle sales, but only for internal combustion engines, so the gasoline and diesel powered ones. This includes the hybrid vehicle statistics as well. The middle column is passenger electric vehicle sales. So this includes battery electric and plug-in hybrid. And the last one is looking at commercial vehicle sales. You can see that for internal combustion engine vehicle sales as well as commercial vehicle sales, with the exception of a couple of geographies, sales this year are significantly lower. That, of course, reflects the impact of the lockdowns, but also consumer sentiment as well as business sentiment. The exception for internal combustion engine vehicle sales, passenger vehicle sales, is Korea. Korea, as our Korean colleagues on the line are aware, because the government actually lowered taxes on consumer purchase of all vehicles, this ended up boosting local demand. For commercial truck sales, the China statistics this year are higher, but this is partly because last year's numbers were really low. So this is just a reflection of that adjustment. What I want to emphasize here is the middle column, which is really the exciting news. Aside from a few geographies, you can see that electric vehicle sales this year have been very robust. In Europe in particular, you can see that all across Europe, with the exception of Norway, which was already leading, all across Europe, the sales growth this year has either been double digit or in some markets has been triple digits. Here in Korea also, the sales have done really well. China's sales for the first half has been down, although the statistics for Q3 have been quite good. And we've seen recovery. And Japan sales continue to be down, but it's more to do with the lack of new model availability in that market. And in the US case is really the fact that there hasn't been that many new models, but also the federal tax credits for some automakers has basically reached the lower levels, so consumers are not getting the full benefits anymore, particularly for those that are buying Teslas or any GEAN model, and increasingly Nissan models as well. On the Europe side, you can now see on the left chart, if you look at the percentage of EV sales as total passenger vehicle sales, you can now see that Europe, by the second quarter this year, as a whole, we're reaching almost 10% of vehicle sales being EVs. And what's very interesting is that now Europe is starting to sort of edge over China and leading the market. On an aggregate level, for the first half of this year, EV sales in Europe have been higher than China. Of course, we have to wait for the full statistic for the year to see whether Europe will lead over China this year or not. Since 2015, China has been the largest EV market in the world. Now, the sharp increase in Europe is, of course, driven by the emission standards that came into place from this year. You can see that for automakers like Geely, Volvo, EV sales are now accounting for more than 25% of their total sales in the last quarter, in second quarter of this year. I think many of you are already aware, so starting from this year, automakers selling vehicles in Europe have to meet strict emission standards. And the result of that, depending on the vehicle lineup mix that they have to increase the EV sales, otherwise they will have to pay fines. You can see that Volvo, BMW, and Hyundai Motor Group had already started increasing their EV sales from last year, but many other, particularly European automakers, did not do this. So you can see like the likes of Volkswagen and PSA and FCA were very, very low right until this year. The difference in strategy is around many of the European automakers wanted to wait until this year to start EV sales because this year acts as the baseline for all the emission reductions that they need to meet right up to 2030. So if you sell a lot of EVs in 2019, your baseline becomes harder to start with. But of course, this is a risky strategy because it means that if you're not then able to familiarize consumers with your EV models, you might not be able to sell enough EVs to avoid paying fines. If you look more closely around the automakers in Europe, BMW, the Renault-Nissan partnership, and PSA, they're already selling EVs at the point that, at least for the remainder of this year or next year, they're pretty okay. So even if their EV sales drop, they won't have any issues in terms of meeting their compliance requirements. On the other hand, when you look at the likes of Volkswagen, they need to make sure that they can increase their EV sales, particularly next year, similarly for Daimler. I put on Toyota because it's an interesting example. You can see that Toyota, the requirements for Toyota are really low still. And the main reason is because they have a very large hybrid lineup. So it means when you calculate their corporate average fuel economy as well as emissions is quite low. So for them to remain compliant, the share of EVs that they need is the lowest among all other automakers. One automaker that has been recently in the news and you may have heard is Ford. So Ford is running into issue in terms of meeting its compliance requirements, particularly because unfortunately it had to recall its Kuga plug-in hybrid SUV that it launched late last year. So it has had to recall those vehicles. By having to recall those vehicles, that means now it doesn't have the sales to meet its compliance requirements. So it will have to pursue a similar strategy to Fiat Chrysler Group, which in the case of Fiat Chrysler Group, they right now they still don't sell that much EVs in Europe, actually almost nothing. The result of that is that they're buying credits from Tesla. Ford having to recall them means they will have to pool with another automaker to make sure that they remain compliant. In the case of Hyundai Motor Group, unfortunately, the Kona recall will have a negative impact, but they're likely going to be still okay given that they've built quite a bit of a lead. Now, I've talked a lot about this year. The one topic that has come up quite a bit is around stimulus. So I wanted to share with you some statistics around how much of the funding that the various governments around the world have provided to combat COVID-19 has been targeted as green stimulus. There's been, by the tally that we did just a couple of weeks ago, in total this year there's been about $160 billion US worth of green stimulus approved. Of that, actually, electrified transport is one of the largest segments, so roughly about 25% of that are going through, of that 160 billion is going towards electrified transport, which is great news. And actually, Korea is leading in terms of green stimulus. So the Korea New Deal, which includes various components, the green part of that is actually the largest national level of green stimulus announced so far. in Europe, there is a very large European Union green proposal, so in total 724 billion US dollars. Off of that, 80 billion has already been approved, but the remaining 644 billion dollars is still in negotiation. So once that's approved, that will be quite significant as well. And then if you stack these up again, you can see then you've got South Korea with 61 billion and then the EU nations with 80 billion so far. Of course, the EU package would be 644 billion as a whole. So Europe and Korea are really leading on this side so far. The unfortunate thing, though, is that while these needs are all really good, there has been, as part of the stimulus packages that have been approved so far, so you remember that 160 billion green number? It's been $866 billion worth of stimulus for carbon intensive measures. So that's not really good. So as part of the stimulus measures that the countries have announced, unfortunately, they haven't paid enough attention to make them green. Even here in Korea, while the green stimulus is very large, unfortunately, for example, the lower tax break that the government gave, having given that tax breaks to all vehicles was not really a good move, because essentially it means you have a lot of consumers that are going to go buy new internal combustion engine vehicles, and those new vehicles will be on the road for 10, 15 years. If you look at the total stimulus that has been approved globally so far, it's about 12 trillion. 91% of that you could say is neutral, essentially. So there's measures like wage protection, which are really important, and that's great. But unfortunately, when you compare the green portion of that versus the CO2 intensive part of that, there's basically been 7 to 8 times more CO2 intensive measures approved compared to the green ones. And this is really unfortunate. This would have been best if it could have been avoided, because a lot of this infrastructure becomes locked in. Still, we do expect EV sales to recover, partly driven by the EU emission standards, China's new energy vehicle mandate, and here in Korea, of course, the new corporate average fuel economy standard and emission standards that was recently announced, just announced, I believe, about a month and a half ago, which is still going through review, that will also become a long-term driver for EV adoption. So we are quite positive when we look at the rest of the year, all the way through 2021. And long-term, we still remain bullish. I think many of you who have seen my presentations have seen one version of this chart already. We continue to see declines in lithium-ion battery prices. So by 2024, we are talking on a global pack level average being below $100 per kilowatt hour. So this means when we look at electric vehicle adoption from a purely economic standpoint, putting aside even any sort of policy drivers, we're still looking at a world where 1/3 of the passenger vehicle fleet on the road by 2040 will be electrified. And we continue to see electrification of mobility expanding to other segments. If you look at two-wheelers and buses, they're on a fleet level, they're already at a 20% level. Of course, a lot of this is driven by what's happening in China. To be fair, for two-wheelers, markets like Vietnam are also quite leading, and they're very interesting. On the commercial vehicle side, light commercial vehicles, EV adoption is accelerating, and we've seen a lot of corporate announcements. Here in Korea, there's been some interesting partnerships being announced by the likes of SSG, as well as other consumer-facing conglomerates. Of course, Amazon has made significant moves here as well. Once we look at the heavier classes of commercial vehicles, this is where it becomes really interesting when we talk about fuel cells. I need to wrap up, but I figured, just in the interest of our colleagues from across Southeast Asia, to share just a few notes around how do we think about adoption of electric mobility in Southeast Asia. By 2025, we still, when we compare it to sort of the global numbers, which are really driven by what's happening in China and Europe, we still see adoption of EVs in Southeast Asia being a little bit lower, although on the two-wheeler side, Vietnam is already leading. When we look at 2030, we see adoption of commercial electric vehicles and buses in the region picking up. Municipal buses are an interesting application where you can make the argument that on a total cost of ownership basis, you can achieve economic benefits quite quickly. And then by 2040, this is where we really see the market picking up. So it's really more driven by economics. And then secondary issue is, of course, access to infrastructure. Charging infrastructure is a lot easier when you're talking about two-wheelers. You can have systems where you can essentially swap the battery, and then the consumer can carry the battery to their home and charge it. Buses and commercial vehicles also, for planning and deploying that charging infrastructure, is a bit easier. Passenger cars tend to be the hardest because you really have to come up with a solution for those that park their passenger vehicle on the road. On this note, I will stop here and pass it to Cher. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thanks very much, Ali. That was a really, really great insight. But we have a lots of time after Dr. Kim's speech, so I think for the comment, the question we're going to bring up after 11:20. We also have a very important guest speaker today, Mr. Kim Gi-jun. He's from the ADB. He will give us keynote speech for the e-mobility policies, especially in developing countries. Dr. Kim, please.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this event, and which I am very much engaged in last several years. I will share my screen first. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So it's about, ADB has been working on electric vehicles for quite several years, starting from China about 4 years ago. So then we launched electric vehicle studies and the project promotion. So I will summarize what ADB has been doing and what it makes, any implications or opportunities for industry in the electric vehicles. So down. Okay. Okay, let me introduce ADB very briefly. ADB is not commercial bank. It's a development bank established in 1966. So annual lending by ADB is about 33 billion in 2019, and about 67 member countries over Central Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Northeast Asia, and some Pacific countries. So it covers most of the Asian countries. And the headquarters is in Manila. So what dictates ADB's operation is very global. We follow UN Sustainable Development Goals, particularly in transport sector. We look at Goal 11 and Goal 13, make cities and human settlement inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. That's the first thing. And also take urgent action to combat climate change. So people and climate change is the big guiding line for ADB's operation. Also, we follow UN climate change resolutions and the Paris Agreement on climate change. Following that, ADB has a strategy 2030, and within that, we look at our own corporate target about the climate change and making cities more livable. Then we transport sector look at how to interpret that in a corporate target strategy, and e-mobility sits in very, very well in that target. And transport sector, energy sector, also private sector operation, we all together looking at electric vehicle operation in ADB. Okay, I will get back to Bloomberg slides. It's very nice, very easy to read. So left-hand side graph shows what's the turnover between combustion engine vehicles and electric vehicles is, we say about after 2035, more vehicles, electric vehicles will be sold globally than internal combustion engines. That's a kind of, guideline we look at. But right-hand side graph is more industrial implication. Then what kind of vehicles will be electrified earlier? So buses, two-wheelers, is very significant implication to industry, what they have to invest, because buses are the focus of ADB and many MDBs and Global Climate Fund. So we look at the buses first. So ADB has been working on electrifying buses mostly in many cities, as well as advising electrifying other modes and two-wheelers as well. So this is very nice Bloomberg efforts. I appreciate Ali about this. So ADB launched some of the studies and project scoping studies. In 1918, we started published one publication, Sustainable Transport Solution. It's based on the Chinese bus electrification experience. Very early stage. We surveyed many of the operators actually operating electric vehicles and how they perform. So it's a bit, the technical side is a bit outdated because technology advanced in the last couple of years very much. So, but still it means a lot for the countries who starts the electrifying buses. It was funded by the JEF grant. Then last year we launched e-mobility options for ADB developing member countries. It's a consolidated kind of report based on the first year study. You can download from the website. And then last year and this year, early this year, we look at the city level, what the cities should do. So we look at 19 countries, 25 cities, and also some other cities are under study at the moment. So we look at regional balance, how they do it, but we didn't include India and China because it's the government's EV policy is very strong and moving so fast. So we look at other countries. So what has been ADB doing for electric vehicles? We have many loan projects already. So many of the ADB loan projects in China, urban transport project includes electrifying buses. But the first loan project, not the first, but in a loan project in Shandong. Actually, we started it as a trolley bus project because city already have a trolley bus. So we compare different options. Then later, couple of years later, government asking, can they have electric buses rather than trolley buses? A kind of issue where the city has a trolley buses already. So I think they concluded, made a good decision between electric buses and trolley buses. Also, all other projects, we have an e-tricycle project in Manila, and also in China, we have a policy-based landing and facility for air quality. Within that, the proportion of the funding goes to the electrifying buses. And also we have a private sector loan for different countries, especially in China. The private sector give a loan to the financial intermediary, then financial intermediary give a lease of the electric buses to the operators. It's a very successful project. Also recently we processed the electric bus project in Kyrgyzstan, Bishkek, but the current political incidents made the project on hold. And also in Bishkek, there's more complicated issues. In Bishkek, in Central West area, there are strong marketing activities by the CNG supply chain. So there's some competition between CNG and electric vehicles, but ADB provides scientific analysis, what is better for environment in terms of the cost. So to let the the government to decide their own decision. That's ADB's role. Also, ADB do international coordination with the international organizations, and GEF is providing ADB for funding, small funding for ADB being a regional platform for e-mobility. That's one thing. Also, ADB have a coordination with other MDBs and GCF and other bilateral supports. But GCF is most significant. We're working on the having e-mobility program is a grant. The grant can pay about 25-35% of the project amount to fill the gap between the price of the combustion engine buses and the e-buses. So also we have a pilot where I'm running the pilot remotely from Manila in Thailand about the electrifying small boats. So it's already operational. The contract has been made with the private owners. ADB finance part of the electric boats. Then we are monitoring the performance of the electric boat. It's small scale, it's not big ferry or others. So we are doing electric delivery vehicles in Vietnam. In Vietnam, Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh, they have a very narrow road, and moving e-commerce products by motorcycle, they cannot load much in a volume because motorcycle has its own structure. So we look at how we modify the motorcycle, and we look at the option for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and small vans. But in Vietnam at the moment, three-wheelers, tricycles are not allowed. So we come up with a two-wheeler design modification. And also in the Thailand, that e-boat project, and it's about 8 passenger e-boats with a motor, electric motor with a solar panel on the roof. And actually it can run without charging. That's why ADB focused on the small boats. There are 40,000 small boats in Thailand. So it can be disseminated to other countries as well. So the operators are not a very high income big corporation. There's the individuals, they use the small boat for tourism and fishing and in the off season. So we're looking at how it performs and design. The product has been already made by the European manufacturer. So we are financing that pilot project. Also we used to have a workshops, training, but it's now stopped. So we are thinking about having online activities on that. Also, ADB provide loans and grants for electric vehicle project. Mostly we provide loans to the buses. It's a public sector loan, look at the buses. And also we have a non-sovereign or private sector loan. And but ADB is not really interested in private EVs. We can finance public charging stations. The private sector is working with a Thailand company, Energy Absolute, for lending ADB loan for public charging station development. Those are the actual activities ADB has been working on. So when I look at the electric vehicle, the ecosystem, it has many factors. You know, it's not simple. Oh, you just change from combustion engine to electric vehicles. So it has many factors. The national government policy, how their commitment in NDC, energy security is an issue. Also, emission regulations and reduction plan policy matters. Also, what kind of financial arrangement, like examining taxes and VATs, all those incentives matters. That comes from the national and local government. Also, non-financial incentives also matters, like giving giving preferential treatment for electric vehicles in the parking or city centers. Also, big factor coming in is how the developing countries, where they have a existing motor industry, how they transform their combustion engine car manufacturing industry into electric vehicles. That's very serious issue. So if you look at the Indonesia case, the government issued a decree that the proportion of the domestically produced parts should be certain percentage. Also, that's the industry's issue. There's many countries look at that. When I travel around the countries, many of the countries interested in what industrial opportunity they have, and even small countries, they're thinking about what they should do. So I think developing business opportunities for around the electric vehicle ecosystem is kind of issue Bloomberg can look at, or any institution can look at. Also, economic factor, how much is it? It's a big issue. Is it cheaper than combustion engine, or it dictates by it's still the purchase cost of the electric vehicle is higher than combustion engine vehicles, especially in developing countries. They buy second-hand combustion engine vehicles. So the price is still very high by electric vehicles. So, but also the environment where the electric vehicle can be popularized depending on the different price factors, like fuel cost, fuel subsidy, fuel tax, also electricity tariff. All those factors matters to decide for the consumers to decide. But the bus operators is more, it's also economically very important. But some countries where the bus operation is financed by the government or municipal government or central government, they are more active converting into electric buses. But private operators still have a very long way to go, because government is not really willing to subsidize private operators for buying electric buses. That's the thing. Also, environmental factors, we look at the grid factor, which dictates the emission of the electric vehicles at the power plant. How much CO2 they generate is a kind of criteria for ADB and the international institutions for giving grants and the finance. Also, fuel quality and vehicle is an important factor. So we also look at the emissions and pollutions in the city, because electric vehicle virtually emit no pollution from tailpipe on the street. But we look at what is the benefit of that emission reduction. So those are the things. Also, financial business model is still evolving. As I said, in a government, that's fine. If they have committed to electrify their buses or government vehicles, they come up with the solutions. And I recently received the news from the Tashkent in Uzbekistan. The government decided to have 300 electric buses financed by the National Bank. Even if those are the things that's based on our report last year, we provided Tashkent EV scoping report last year, and they just catch it very quickly, and they having those things. But Nepal is the same. They're financing themselves for 200 or 300 electric buses, and also what will be the battery reuse and recycle financing or business models will be. So business model is still evolving, but many of the activity in building business model in EV is about charging stations, but I haven't seen any successful model yet. So we have to look at it. Also, many countries, small countries, they want to install charging station. So they're asking, can we install charging station? I said, where is the electric vehicles? So it's chicken and egg issues. the ADB's position is it should go together. So once you have a charging station development plan, you should have an electric vehicle fleet plan together. Without that, you will lose the money because technology changes. If you install charging station just hoping people buy electric vehicles, the technology will be obsolete in 2-3 years. So the timing is the big issue they have to decide. So ADB also finance charging stations, public charging stations is within the scope of ADB financing. So good plan makes good more opportunity for investment. So this is what I said in the grid factor and the fuel price and the electricity tariff. This is the plot of the 3 variables. The bottom diesel price, dollar per liter, and the y-axis is the electricity tariff. How, as for now, how those ADB developing countries sits in that area. So you look at the red spot means they have a high emission factor. That means the electricity comes from either oil, diesel, or coal. So many of the South Pacific countries, they use a diesel power generation. So they are very high a grid factor, but some of the countries, small dots with a green means they have a more renewable energy, like Kyrgyzstan and Nepal, Georgia, and what other countries. They have a very low emission factor. That means they have more opportunity to reducing greenhouse gas emission by electrifying early. Also, the price of the fuel and relative to electricity tariff, that dictates how much the consumer should pay and how much they can save by electrifying transport. So those are the trends, and we look at the opportunities for in a country like Kyrgyzstan, which already processed, and Georgia is another case. I was in Georgia 2 years ago, and we had a consultation with the government, and they had already have a plan for buying diesel buses, very expensive diesel buses. The second batch was in preparation. So we discussed it, why don't you consider electric buses? And several months later, I was informed by the local ADB staff that the government switched to electric buses. So that's a matter of information and how you evaluate. So that's why ADB is covering so many countries to make the developing countries make their own rational decision. And this is more in a detailed graph. You can see how the cities, countries has it. So we look at Tajikistan has a very strong, they have a very nearly zero, 30 grams per kilowatt hour CO2 emission, and Kyrgyzstan and Nepal, Georgia, Laos is not that bad. Also, they have a very high range of higher fuel price, but they have a very low electricity tariff. So it's economically they have more opportunity, not modifying their policy a lot. So those are the analysis ADB is doing and knocking the door for developing countries for any support they need. So this is the rough left-hand side graph shows, based on the buses, how much greenhouse gas you can save for different grid factors. So the bottom Kathmandu, they are nearly zero emission factor. They rely on hydropower. I mean the operational emission. So if they electrify, they can save nearly 100% of the CO2. So that's why the Nepal government decide to convert their buses into electric buses with their own fund. Also, Nepal is one of the big consumer of Kia Kona. when I visited last year, there was 6-month queue for Nissan Kona. I hope the fire doesn't come anymore. So that's the graph. The other extreme is Ulaanbaatar. Ulaanbaatar is, their electricity is based on the coal, and the grid factor is 870 gram, for CO2 per kilowatt hour. But if they electrify, they still can save 27.5% of greenhouse gases by operation. So, even extreme high grid factor countries, opportunities are still there. So, we use this as an indicator where the greenhouse gas reduction efficiency comes in which country and cities. And the right-hand side is all countries where the grid factor sits. So this is the economy. Price is another matter. So we compared the capital cost and the operating cost, the energy cost. So two countries has totally different picture. So Kyrgyzstan, they already have taxes nearly similar to gasoline taxes, and e-minibus is much higher because the capital cost is higher, and e-bus is higher because of the capital cost. Because capital cost of the e-buses is about 2-3 times more than combustion engine low range, price range diesel buses. But if you look at Penang, Malaysia is very much promoting private vehicles. So Penang, they have a less than 10% public transport modal share, one of the lowest modal share in the world in terms of public transport. They have about twice more expensive in terms of the bus costs, again, between diesel and e-buses, but they don't have much saving in operating costs because their fuel price is so low. So relative saving by switching from fossil fuel to electricity doesn't make much attractiveness for the consumers and as well as the public operators. So different pricing structure makes different opportunities and appetite for different countries. So how much greenhouse gas they can save? Bishkek, they can save almost most of the greenhouse gases for taxis and buses. We use the their mileage they're driving per day. But in Penang, their grid factor is high, so they are not saving as much as the Bishkek. So that's the things the environmental concern comes. So also we look at different options when we prepare the scoping study. We look at different vehicles. It's about buses. So diesel, CNG, trolley bus, hybrid trolley, and fast charge battery vehicles. We look at all capital costs, operating costs, the financial costs. It turns out that fast charge electric buses are best option for Bishkek. That's how we push the project as a loan project in Bishkek. So it's just a scientific exercise. And also the financial cost is one of the factors because they can tap some of the grants and the international grants. They can lower the financial cost more than this. So we recommend fast charged electric buses in Bishkek. So ADB structured a loan for Bishkek, the bus fleet for 31 million, and the charging depot upgrade and the pilot corridor improvements for traffic management and bus operations. So this is kind of structure of the ADB project, and before we structure the loan project, what we concern about economic factor and the environmental factor. Also, we're looking, and I mentioned delivery vehicles in Vietnam. We look at different options, and we now produce the specification for that Vietnam delivery vehicles. And we, ADB is not working on as a commercial entity, so we work with the Lazada, one of the company on the Alibaba. So they are willing to invest their money on the delivery vehicles. The two things, Lazada's concern is two things: how to maximize efficiency for delivery, because e-commerce product is not necessarily heavy, but it's bulky. The boxing is big, so they are looking at more storage volume in the vehicles. Also, we look at the three-wheelers, but in Vietnam, three-wheelers are not allowed by regulation. But we try to change that regulation, but it may take some time. So we are going for two-wheeler option, and specification has been prepared for them, and Lazada is going to invest replacing their fleet. So the interesting story is that in Lazada in Hanoi, I met a real mania of delivery motorcycle. He pushed all those things, and ADB working together with him. So this is another area of electrification supported by ADB. The left-hand top photo shows the long-tail boats in Thailand. You can see big truck engine with a long shaft. So if you have been to Thailand, you can see the beautiful sea and island. But once the long-tail boat passes nearby you, you cannot talk. So noisy and smelly and spilling oil on the sea, the beautiful sea. So, one of the islands was closed for several months in Thailand because of tourism and pollution. So that's where my idea came. I was working on the urban transport in Thailand. Then I said, we have to electrify. So I pushed the idea. So right-hand side top photo shows the first type of the electric boats. It can have about 8 passengers, and the solar rooftop solar panel on the rooftop, have a small motor and battery in it. It's not very expensive. It's only 15 kilograms. And we look at the operational profile of those long-tail boats. They don't even need charging. So they can, because they operate not all day long. They wait passengers and the islands. They let the tourists to play, and then they wait for the passengers a couple of hours and 1 hour. So they can charge. So we are still monitoring how it performs. The reason this option is great is that installing charging station near the shore is very difficult, and also it makes complications. If they can run without charging for not always, about 70-80% of their operation, that would be great benefit. So also ADB is looking at river boats in Thailand. So how we electrify, there's already some European company made 2-motor electric boats in Thailand. So we're monitoring the performance of it. And also ADB is financing big company Energy Absolute for developing over 200 passenger e-ferries. So design is already done. So ADB is looking for financing, and then because before finance, ADB should verify that technology works and safe. So there's ADB supporting that activities. So concluding remark, well, electrification is already global demand. No one can reverse it. That's why my message, how we go there is depending on the government's policy and strategy. Technology will advance as well. The price of the battery will go down. Business model will come. So that's the more important to the small developing countries because they are receiving technology and change of the whole ecosystem. They are not leading it, so they have to be prepared what to do about it. And also, I've been in transport for many years, but electric vehicle is the most efficient, direct way of reducing greenhouse gas and air pollution. So that's the commitment ADB has, and that's why it's pushing it. And because shifting people from private car to public transport is so difficult and so costly, but electrification is much easier and direct option. Also, many of the countries rely on import of fossil fuels. If they have enough electricity from renewable energy, they can have a higher energy security and improve the balance of payment of the country by reducing fuel import. Also, buses and the two-wheelers, urban trucks should have a priority because they run whole day. They emit more pollutions, they use more energy. So having buses and trucks electrified first has a more benefit to local and global sense. So, okay. But the capital cost is still an issue. So that's where the financing and business model is necessary. Also international funding like the ADB concessional loan or grant or GCF grants can play a role. So for developing countries, they have to look for those opportunities, and the ADB is helping them to get those grants. And also electricity price or fuel price policy by the country is important. And some of the country, they lower the electricity tariff for 3 years. First 3 years, that could be the temporary, but the good policy. Also levying extra tax for fossil fuel and cross-subsidize electric vehicle could be the solution. And also giving priority for electric vehicles is good measure for local non-financing measures, like giving allowing electric vehicles to run on the high occupancy lane or giving parking free for limited time and with charging stations. Those are policies which makes the consumers to switch to electric vehicles. And lastly, what is the opportunity, industrial opportunity for developing countries? I think they're serious. Many of the countries are serious. Look at, as Ali's presentation, you see Vietnam, Thailand has a strong lead, except China and India and Asia. So they're looking at those opportunities. For example, Thailand, the Energy Absolute is a big company, one of the biggest companies in Thailand. They bought battery company in Taiwan. So they want to internalize the manufacturing activities into their own country. Indonesia is doing the same, but Malaysia is not doing much about the electrifying transport. So I hope they can jump from this condition for the future. And that's my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Well, we'll have around 80 minutes left until the promised schedule. So we'll keep the comment and question for the end of the session, and I'm going to carry on the roundtable session from now. We have around 8 speakers waiting for it, so hopefully we can have around 5 minutes each. Then after that, we'll have a kind of open discussion for everybody. So I guess I have to I'll let you know who's going to speak first and who's going to do the following. So in my document, I have 8 speakers here from the USA, China, Korea, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Myanmar, and Vietnam. So I think we should follow the order what I just explained. So maybe we'll start from the Professor Jakob, then we're going to follow Dr. Liu, Mr. Liu from the China, and then we're going to carry on after that. So Professor Jakob, do you have a few words for us? You're there?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, good. No, I do have a slide presentation, but I don't think I will do that. I'll just talk for a few minutes. I found the presentation very interesting. It's always good to hear Ali give a talk about what's going on. Heard him last time also, but that was in person. It was a lot more fun than what you did just on thing. But I think one of the things that we're looking at Stony Brook University, where I work now, is we're looking at the aspects of EV increasing and the load on the electrical grid and the effect of the electrification of the vehicles, what impact that's going to have on the resiliency of the electric grid. As we know, there is a lot more now work going on in renewables. Renewable penetration is greatly expanded. New York State, for example, I believe that by 2030, we are supposed to have almost 50% of the electricity generated in the state to be renewables. So we're putting a lot of effort into offshore wind power and into solar, which means, of course, because they're intermittent, which means that there's a lot of effort going on in battery storage. And so the impact of EV, and it's certainly, we are getting a lot more interest in electric vehicles. We have many more electric vehicles on the road than we did a few years ago, and that's going to be expanding. Now, what is the effect of that on the grid? As we know, the electric grid needs to operate 24/7, and having electric vehicles, more and more electric vehicles, implies that we need a steady supply of electricity. And the problem with the renewables is that you have to store them, and therefore there's a lot of research work going on battery storage, what types of batteries we use, and so on. There's a lot of that going on at Stony Brook right now, where we have multiple national and state centers focused specifically on the grid and how do we make it more resilient, okay, in case of the additional power that's needed to be generated. And if you look at the growth of the use of electric power, that's extremely expanding now, and that needs to be met by renewables. And so storage has become a problem. We have a huge, a major research center focused on energy storage. We have a national center focused on advancing the integration of renewables into the grid. And so there's a lot of research involving tens of professors and hundreds of students, graduate students, that are working on those problems. So it's a very exciting time for universities and academia in this particular discipline. And I think we're going to see a lot more results over the next couple of years in trying to improve the operation of the grid and the penetration of renewables into the grid, and therefore also the charging of automobiles. So with that, I'll stop. I think I've taken a little bit more than 5 minutes, but thank you.
Thanks very much, Professor. We're going to pass on to the China, Mr. Liu. Then we're going to follow Korea, Mr. Huang after China. Mr. Liu?
5 minutes. So only 5 minutes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So because the short timing and first, let me see the screen. Start to the. Okay. For the set up a screen, I just introduce ourselves. China EV100 is NGO and mainly concerned about the high-end EV industry policy, and also we are doing research and high-end communication. So that's good. Okay, and we actually formulated Chinese EV industry policies, and from the financial stimulation to the dual credit system. And this year we are finished the extension of the financial stimulation package for another 2 years. And we have set up, according to the Chinese government, we have a new target. We have the carbon dioxide peak by 2030, carbon dioxide neutral by 2060, and we have the plan 2035 for the Chinese NEV and ICEV. For ICEV, that is the average 100 kilometers for 1.7 liter gasoline or fuel. That's a very strict target. That means the traditional ICEV is impossible exist by 2035. And so we can see, and we can see that, and we.
Sorry, Mr. Liu, I can't hear your voice clearly. I think you're on mute. Yes.
You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that. Okay. No problem. And so, okay, this is our slides. So we, in China, we have just mentioned before, we have two-wheeler electrical vehicles about 250 million. We have high-speed electric trains, 35,000 kilometers, around 3,000 trains. We have the public electrical transportation for buses for more than 50% of market share. We have the number one electrical vehicles, NEV, 50% worldwide production and consumption and ownership. So that's a basic Chinese situation. And for China's EV market, you can see that we said that with the pandemic situation, we have a much better performance. We have a much better projection than first half of the year. We have expected by the end of the year, China will produce more than 1 million NEV, including BEV 950,000. 950,000, and the PHEV 250,000, equally same as 2019. We have more people want likely come to buy their own electric vehicle, not to buy by the government support. And you can see that on the right side, and the private buyer grows quickly. And the most important thing is that we have the middle high-end branding and has a higher growth rate, and following with Tesla. We can see that after Model 3, we have the new ES6, Xiaopeng P7, Guangdong GEAN, BYD Han. All of them are major Chinese middle-high branding. We can see that for the, how can we reach that to the popular market, most popular market, that's rural area, small and middle-sized cities. So people there, they have the buying power to buy 5,000 RMB, mileage 200 kilometers, electric vehicles. You see, for the last 2 months, on the right side, the first one called mini EV, with 120 kilometer mileage. The price is less, bottom price is less than 30,000 RMB. That means that vehicle will be fully compatible with ICEV, because from the electricity, the electrical cost, or from buying price, are much lower than ICEV. So for the last 2 months, that kind of model has sales much more than Tesla Model 3. It's the #1 selling brand in China. Last month, it sells 25,000 of them, fully off the operation. But that is the huge market potential, because China has 600 million population with monthly revenue roughly 1,000 RMB, and the family revenue around 50,000 RMB, and the 10% of the transportation cost just covers that kind of four-wheelers. So that will be huge, 100 million market. So that will potentially become the electrification market. So originally we expected the electric vehicle full cost will be lower than ICEV by 2025. Now we see we already have that kind of model start to overpass ICEVs. So we have quite happy to see that. And then we can see the trend of in the future. For basic market, I just said, the people have more people to buying electric. For China, 60% of people like to buy their first car as an EV. And we have a lot of people like to buy an EV for the middle high-end products. Also from our technology side, last year and this year has a major improvement on battery side. So-called CTP technology, applied age battery technology, which is tradition to tremendously reduce battery cost. That made the EV cost lower. So, and we can also major international auto components coming to China, such as Japan, Korea, and Germany. And we from history, China has a financial stimulation package, and now we have driven by financial package also with market driving. In the near future, in 2 years, it totally depend on market. And the modeling is different. Traditionally, we are relying on long-range BEV. Now we have the BEV, we have the HEV, PHEV, and the fuel cell EV. So all together to driving Chinese electrical vehicle together. So in the near future, we can see in 10 or 20 years, every Chinese car has the power battery on it. It will become reality. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Liu. We're going to have another speaker from Korea, which is Mr. Hwang from Jeju Energy Corporation. After that, I'm going to pass on to Indonesia, please. Mr. Hwang.
안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. 짧은 시간이기 때문에 간단하게 최근 정부에서 발표한 정부 뉴딜과 제주 뉴딜에 대해 설명을 드리겠습니다. 그 전에 제주에서 10년 전에 있었던 스마트 그리드 테스트베드에 대한 것에서부터 시작해서 앞으로 10년 뒤에 어떠한 형태를 준비해 가고 있나 간단하게 설명을 드리겠습니다. 10년 전인 2009년에 제주에서는 스마트 그리드 테스트베드가 있었고 거기에서 비즈니스 모델을 ICT 기반에서 이제 개발하는 형태를 취했습니다. 그 당시에 약 2억 3천만 달러 정도가 이제 투자가 됐었고 오른쪽에 보시는 이제 슬라이드에서 보시는 것은 5개 코어 비즈니스를 그 당시에 했었는데 여기에서 보시게 되면 이제 스마트 홈이라든지 에너지 스토리지라든지 신재생 에너지, 전기 자동차 충전 인프라 그리고 이제 이런 그 그린 빌딩 같은 것들을 했습니다. 여기에 보면 이제 그게 대부분 현실화된 걸 알 수가 있습니다. 그 당시에 2009년에 이제 스마트 그리드 정보 인포메이션 센터를 만들었는데 우측에 보시는 전기 자동차가 없어서 데모 시스템으로 충전하는 걸 직접 체험하는 형태로 했습니다. 그런데 그 뒤에 3년 뒤에 왼쪽 아래 그 사진에서 보면 3년 뒤에 전기 자동차 시장이 이제 만들어지고 이 급속 충전과 완속 충전하는 형태가 이제 갖춰지게 되죠. 그리고 이제 다시 2011년부터 해서 2012년에 마이크로 그리드가 완성이 되는데 이 모델이 이제 새로운 그 전력 공급, 신재생 에너지를 가지고 전력 공급을 완벽하게 할 수 있느냐 그것에 대한 바로메터였습니다. 근데 이것은 최장 7일 동안 신재생 에너지와 전기 저장 장치만 갖고 공급할 수 있는 기록을 가지고 있기 때문에 우리가 가야 될 미래가 어떤 세상인지를 보여주는 굉장히 중요한 사이트라고 할 수가 있습니다. 그리고 또 하나는 이제 2009년에 150kW짜리의 ESS를 데몬스트레이션 했었는데 2013년에는 이제 8메가와트의 ESS를 데몬스트레이션 합니다. 그 뒤에 FR용 ESS가 이제 등장해서 성장하는 과정을 제주에서 이제 구현을 했습니다. 자, 제주는 이제 2030년까지 제주 전역에 37만 대 자동차를 전부 전기 자동차로 바꾸고 그리고 약 4기가의 이제 신재생 에너지를 설치할 목표를 가지고 있습니다. 거기에 생산되는 전력의 15%, 그러니까 정부가 2030년에 20%를 신재생으로 쓰겠다고 발표했는데 제주는 이미 70%를 신재생으로 쓰고 있는 셈이 됩니다. 정부 목표에. 그리고 저 표에서 보시는 것처럼 전기 자동차는 이미 우측 하단에 2만 대가 넘었죠. 그리고 충전기도 16,000개가 넘습니다. 그럼 어떤 현상의 변화가 있었느냐? 10년 전과 지금을 비교해 보면은 10년 전에는 전력망이 아주 단순했습니다. 발전해서 이제 고객단으로 단순했는데 지금은 보시는 것처럼 굉장히 복잡해졌죠. 그래서 디지털 그리드로 이제 가야 된다는 것을 말씀을 드리는 것이고요. 예, 이런 상황에서 이제 정부가 뉴딜 정책을 발표를 했습니다. 정부의 뉴딜 정책은 앞으로 5년간 약 160조 원 정도를 이제 투자를 하게 되는데, 디지털 뉴딜에서는 생태계에 대한 DNA를 강화하는 쪽하고, 그 다음에 안전망을 구축하는 것, 그리고 비대면 산업을 육성하는 것에다가 마지막은 이제 SOC를 전부 디지털라이제이션 하는 형태에다 이제 초점을 두고 있습니다. 그린 뉴딜의 경우에는 도시나 공간이나 일반 삶에 관련된 인프라를 녹색으로 전환하는 것에 초점을 맞춰 있고, 그리고 이제 그린 산업을 생태계를, 혁신적인 생태계를 이제 구축하는 것, 그리고 마지막은 이제 로우 카본, 그린하우스 가스를 줄일 수 있고 분산 에너지를 이제 확대하는 데다가 초점을 두고 있습니다. 근데 이런 관점에서 정부가 해야 될 목표는 8억 5천만 ton의 CO2 배출을 5억 3천만 톤까지 2030년에는 줄여나가겠다, 이제 이런 방향을 가지고 있는 거고요. 그렇게 했을 때에 3020 플랜에 의해 가지고 2030년이면은 약 63기가의 신재생 에너지를 설치를 해야 된다는 목표가 있습니다. 이렇게 봤을 때 이제 제주에서 가려고 하는 방향은 10개의 정책과 10개의 프로젝트가 있는데, 왼쪽에 보시는 것처럼 그린 뉴딜과 디지털 뉴딜, 그리고 사회 안전망 강화하는 쪽에다 초점을 맞춰서 진행을 하고 있습니다. 그러니까 여기에 세부적인 항목들은 이 제주에서 실현 가능한, 앞에서 실행해온 것과 앞으로 10년간에 걸쳐서 실행해야 될 것들을 중심으로 방향이 잡혀 있습니다. 근데 여기에 핵심적인 것을 보면은, 그러면 제주에서 어떤 전략으로 갈 거냐? 여기에는 앞에서 그 연사분들이 말씀하신 것처럼 카본 프리 클린 아일랜드 지역을 만들어야 되는데, 그렇게 하려고 하다 보니까 에너지 시스템에 대한 통합이 있어야 되고, 그다음에 환경을 보존해야 되고, 그다음에 자원에 대한 재활용 문제, 그리고 로카본 사회를 이제 현실화하는 요 전략적인 것을 선택하지 않으면 안 된다는 얘기입니다. 그렇게 했을 때 이제 핵심 비즈니스 모델들이 녹색, 그러니까 이 그린을 중심으로 하는 형태에 대한 것들을 지역이나 빌딩이나 미래 도시를 대상으로서 가야 되는 것이고, 새로운 산업을 만들지 않으면 안 된다는 거죠. 그런 관점에서 봤을 때 우리가 가야 될 방향은 이 그림 하나로 이제 표시를 할 수가 있습니다. 우리는 이것을 RE300 메가 에너지 시티라고 이름을 붙이고 진행을 하고 있는데, 이 그림에서 이제 보여주고 있는 것들은 그동안에는 화석연료 중심으로 전력을 공급하던 것들을 신재생 에너지로 다 교체를 하도록 하고, 전기 자동차도 전부 이 전환을 해서 운행을 하도록 하는 것입니다. 그런데 이게 사실 쉽지가 않습니다. 전력망 문제도 있고, 또 기간도 많이 걸리고 비용도 많이 들어가죠. 또 바꿨다 그래서 되는 게 아니고 극복해야 될 허들도 많이 있습니다. 그래서 이 그림 한 장으로서 이제 우리가 가야 될 미래 사회를 대변해서 준비하고 있는 것이 되겠습니다. 이렇게 했을 때 이제 우리가 해야 될 것들은 여러 파트너분들하고 협력해서 가야 될 프로젝트들이 있는데, 태양광이나 아니면은 해상, 육상, 풍력 사업으로부터 시작을 해가지고 다양한 스마트 에너지 타운이나 시티를 구축하는 것은 물론 최적화된 디지털 그리드를 만들어 가고, 궁극적으로는 이제 VPP나 P2G, P2H와 같은 이런 종합 시스템을 만들어서 최종적으로는 통합 운영 시스템을, 스마트 에너지 시티용 통합 운영 시스템을 만들어 나가는 게 관건이라고 이렇게 보고 있습니다. 결국에는 앞에서 말씀드린 제주 스마트 그리드 실증 단지에서 10년 전 했던 것들에 대한 것들이 컴포넌트 단위로 하나씩 성장해 와가지고 지금 여기 글로벌 EV 라운드 테이블에서 주재하고 있는 전기 자동차의 이제 미래에 대해서 얘기하고 있지만, 전기 자동차가 늘어나고 있는 것은 한 축이고, 미래 사회가 어떻게 갈 것에 대한 것을 준비하게 되면은 앞에 이미지로 보여드린 것과 같은 그런 형태에 대한 대비가 필요하다고 이제 말씀드릴 수가 있습니다. 그럴 때에 여기에 코퍼레이션 프로젝트들을 종합적으로 추진해야 된다라고 하는 이유가 이제 된다고 말씀을 드리겠습니다. 제 밑에 이제 이메일 주소를 적어놨습니다. 같이 협의를 해서 새로운 미래를 같이 준비를 했으면 좋겠습니다. 예, 시간상 여기까지 말씀드리겠습니다. 고맙습니다.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang. Then I'm going to pass on to Indonesia, Mulo Widodo. Then after that, we're going to pass on to Philippines. Mr. Mulo Widodo, are you there? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, yeah.
Okay. So I'm trying to prepare my short presentation. Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity because of this very short time. So I'm trying to inform you about what happened recently in Indonesia. Concerning there are 4 points. The first one is policy, regulation, and vision of mobility, current situation of EV industry in Indonesia, infrastructure status of EV, and the last one is any sustainable initiative and activity in private sector. So I start with my first presentation. Okay. So everything is getting changed after a long-awaited presidential decree, which was already announced in last year, just August last year. So this is a strong condition for Indonesia to start going into the EV industry. So basically, what is inside the presidential decree is about domestic BEV industry acceleration, and then incentive provision for these activities. And then it's also talking about charging infrastructure and tariff. And of course, the technical regulation, the last one is environment protection. After the president's decree already declared, government, and we are busy for setting up the derivative regulation, preparing for many aspects to promote the EV industry in Asia, specification, certification, tax incentive proposal, operation, and so on. Okay, Indonesia government has a vision that Indonesia will become an important player global, based on battery-based electric vehicle. There are some important programs, but I would like to explain only two in more detail. The first one is about the battery. Indonesia has a lot of abundant of source of nickel ore, especially in, we can say that Indonesia has the biggest nickel ore deposit in the world, especially in the form of low content, we call it laterite, and that is the one mostly as a raw material to develop lithium battery, especially in the NMC type. So usually in the past, we have also some smelter processing the nickel for stainless steel. That is the high grade nickel ore, but for the battery, we are using low grade nickel ore. Is there anybody? Is my voice can be heard from the audience?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, so at the moment, in a very short time, there are some foreign company already signed agreement with Indonesian company, working together with some Indonesian company, state-owned company as well as private company, working together to develop industry from extracting the nickel ore up the way into the final battery production. One good thing is also that there's one company also showing their interest to invest in facility to recycle the battery. So it's good for environmental point of view. So Indonesia want to become a global source of lithium-ion battery in the future based on the availability of raw material for that. At the moment, big company on the battery factory, like industry like from China, from Korea, also from United States, already contacted the government to start develop a battery manufacturing plant in Indonesia. Now, the second one is about the vehicle. The vehicle is the form of car, motorcycle, and bus. Even though in the president's decree that the Indonesian government want to promote Indonesian brand vehicle, but we also welcoming, or they also welcoming all the international company if they want to start electric vehicle production plant in Indonesia. at the moment, there are 2 companies already showing the interest. They want to starting the car manufacturing plant in Indonesia. So the current situation of EV industry, everybody know that the COVID-19 pandemic, all the activity, economical activity is going down. Motorcycle with the internal combustion engine also sinking more than 40 or 45% compared with the last year. The same thing with the car with the internal combustion engine. The selling is also dropped very much, maybe about 40 or 45%. But on the other side, after the presidential decree, the EV industry started with electric motorcycle company. There are 16 companies already registered. So that means that they can start producing the motorcycle, electric motorcycle. As you know that the market for motorcycle is very big in Indonesia. If we say, let's say about 20% of 6 million is about 120,000, about more than that. But at the moment, there are only 4 Indonesian brand motorcycle manufacturer with a total sales about 2,000 units per month. This is very small. And one electric bus company also established with Indonesian brand, they call it MEB. No electric car manufacturers has been established yet, but I know that one local brand is on the development stage, and another one foreign electric company is also shown their interest and make contract to develop electric car manufacturer plant in Indonesia. If you take a look at what we have electric car in Indonesia, there are 2 brands, Tesla and BYD, have been used taxi fleet in Jakarta. But many imported built-up electric car can be purchased and are already available in Indonesia in different kind, like hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or BEV. So that's the one that we can buy. And unfortunately, infrastructure for charger is very bad in Indonesia. That's also hampering the effort to promote the use of more EV vehicles to the society. State-owned electric company of Indonesia, we call it PLN, has been assigned to prepare the charging station infrastructure in Indonesia. At the moment, very small number. But according to their study, in 2030, it should be at least 30,000 charging units to serve the national electric vehicle. If the national goal for having 20% of the total vehicles should be the electric one. Currently, more than 60, this is also not good, as I mentioned also in the Mr. Kim presentation from ADB. Currently, more than 60% of electric power generation in Indonesia are coal-fired. The plan to reduce the use of coal-fired plant, because we have a lot of coal, the plan to reduce the use of coal power plant until 2028 only become 48% from the total power generation mix. So we are looking for another possibility for renewable energy coming from the one that we have, the potential probability in Indonesia. It is on the geothermal and the biomass. Okay, the next one is any sustainability initiative or activity in private sector. Most of Indonesian electric motorcycle are private company because of relatively small investment. Most of the electric motor are using home electric outlet for charging. So charging station is not really needed. But the new one at the moment, we're still in the progress, that we try to develop a battery swap system. Not charging, but we are going to swap the battery, and we are still talking about the standardized dimension, the standardized capacity of the battery. So that's the one that we are trying to concentrate on, the battery swap system for electric motorcycle in the future, because that's the big demand at the moment on the electric vehicle in Asia. I think that's all my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And now I'm going to pass on to Philippine. Adamon, are you there?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I'll just prepare the one that I have to share with you. Yes, can you see the screen? Hello? Can you see my screen?
Not yet. I can see it, but
can you see the screen?
yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
And beautiful picture as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning again. I would like to take the opportunity to thank Chairman Kim and the staff and crew of GEAN for giving us the opportunity to, and a privilege to be part of this roundtable discussions. And in behalf of Electric Vehicle Association of the Philippines, we are happy to support in spite of this pandemic situation that we could have a virtual meeting. So on with my meeting, what to expect on my presentation would be the Philippine industry updates, the EV adoption projections and policy regulation updates, and its international collaboration. First and foremost, I would like to let you know that as of 2018, the registered vehicle, according to Land Transportation Office, is at 10,000 already, and most of the pie of the share would be on the electric tricycles, which is part of the ADB and DOE projects deploying to local government units in Luzon. And as of the moment, these are the current e-cars that are available in the market right now. And we added on Jaguar I-Pace, Chery, and Hyundai Kona and Ioniq just being launched last year. And then also on the plug-in hybrids, there is the 2020 Mitsubishi Outlander was launched during the Philippine EV Summit, as well with the Ioniq PEV and BYD and Volvo and BYD Tang and Range Rovers. And in terms of charging infrastructure updates, a total of 155 charging pods are at place, and the details are as follows: AC chargers at 126 and DC chargers at 11. And we have some battery swapping stations specifically on the e-trikes operations of the fleet operations of in different areas. Now, we also already have this PUB modernization that was launched, but apparently it was affected by the pandemic situation because of the IATF regulations that only 50% are allowed to ride on the specific commuters for the e-jeeps. Now, the restriction was affected on the operation itself, and the regularities of the full operations is still questionable. So, but the PUB loan program was almost put on hold during the lockdown period, but was resumed when the IATF lifted some protocols to make sure that the commuters are safe in terms of addressing the concerns on the COVID-19. So what they did was they stretched out some amelioration program for the operators and the drivers, so that the affected drivers would have some something to take home to during this pandemic situation. And the ones that are affected are the local EV producers, wherein somehow they are anticipating the spike of the production, but was put on hold due to the loan programs of the PUB modernization programs. And also revision of the the subsidies, wherein the government under DOTR recommended additional 80,000, which is 160,000 subsidies for the manufacturers on producing the e-vehicles on the 678 PUB modernization program. And then another is, as mentioned, the DOE completes distribution of 3,000 e-trikes, wherein ADB is part of this loan program for the local government units. And he completed distribution last year. So part of it was being used during the pandemic situation, wherein they make use of it for the frontliners as a vehicle, as a form of transportation during that situation. So it is a very effective that we were able to extend our help, the existence of the EVs and the value that it can do during the situation. And also, they are also local government units try to reach out on some students and some commoners who are affected during the situation. And another is that one local government unit collaborates with the PhilPost in initially doing these e-bikes as mail deliveries. This is part and parcel of the UNEP project, United Nations Environment Program, on its initiative on addressing the logistics concern. They piloted 20 units, that is, wherein the units were donated by one of a private company to the Pasig PhilPost project. So looking at is the projections of having this as a mobility in terms of logistics, and wherein local can develop and produce multi-purpose electric delivery vans in the future, and having the connection and smart logistics approach during this EV industry advocacy. And this is the household uptakes wherein what is the mostly being brought about in the market, wherein ICEs dominated the market at more than majority of the selling in availability. But in terms of the projections itself, if we put in the tax incentives and the infrastructure development, we would be somehow fill the gas and fill the leverage of reaching on to its parity on developing the electric vehicle industry on different terms, on different car availability and models. So will there be a demand? Approximately 45,000 annual sales by 2030, and then I know of that the earlier study of Bloomberg was being issued, pointed at the ASEAN market, and we are very optimistic that this market would push through in the Philippines as long as continuous and sustainability of the electric vehicle industry, in particular the associations, the EVAP Association and government sector will work together and bring in the industry as one. And then we are approximately producing 300 EVs in vehicle by 2030. And then we also look into the commercial and public transport and government vehicles, wherein 1/4 of which procurement of government vehicles is doable, wherein yearly they procure vehicles to different departments. So, well, long and behold, that households or some commuters would somehow consider on using the e-vehicles as well. Now, we are vying on our champion in the Senate by the name of Senator Win Gatchalian in having this Bill 1382, wherein it's on its second interpellation, and looking at it at an approval by this year. We also already lobbied it at the Congress on House Bill numbers 4075 and 4391 under Chairman Lord Velasco. And we are looking at the approval of the President on passing this bill and passing it to a law so that we can itemize the role of government agencies and address demand generation and industry developments. In terms of incentives, fiscal and non-fiscal incentives, we're looking at this opportunity that we can push through with the EV industry. And in terms of land transportation office, we are waiting for the approval of the administrative order wherein our association pitch into this electric vehicle guidelines and regulation, particularly on the e-mobility for the small vehicles up to its classified vehicles that are very safe to the commuters and to the users. In terms of vehicle parts and standards development, we were able to adopt 63 EV-related standards already,
and we lost your voice. Are you still with us, Edmund? Mr. Edmund, are you still there? I think we lost his signal. Yeah. Are we able to back to our own screen? Thank you. Yeah, I think we lost the signal from the admin, so I think we still have an opportunity to have his word during the discussion session. So I think to keep the time, I'm going to move on to Thailand. Do we have Christy there? Yes, this is kind of huddle for having a online conference. But do we have a Miss So from Myanmar on the stage?
Yes, I have.
Okay, I think we have to move on to Myanmar first, and we're going to come back to Thailand and the Philippines to having his word. Miss So, can I have a few of your words? Yeah, please.
Yeah, but I have some I prepare some PowerPoint to share.
Please,
but I think now I cannot share.
There's a share button on the bottom of the screen.
No. Because the other participant is sharing.
I see. Yeah, I think Edmund is still online, but it's okay. Can you do it without presentation?
Okay.
Please. Yeah.
Yes. I'm Mr. Chairman and all of you, everyone. Yeah, good morning from Myanmar. I'm Sosanae, I'm working as a rector of the University of Information Technology. Yeah, first I would like to talk about the history of MIVA. Actually, in our University of Information Technology, we have collaborated lab that's supported by the Korea Engineering Alliance, KEA, that's called the Fabrication Lab, K-Lab at the UIT. So because of that, I know each other with the chairman, Mr. Kim Dae-won from the KEA, and so that is the main reason that I became the member of the GEAN today. So in 2018, in 2018 May, I joined the very first time to the GEAN meeting, and And after that, for fostering research in the EV sector, in the November 2018, we signed the MOU between the MOU among the Jeju National University and International EV Expo Organization Committee with Mr. Kim and also the UIT. Yeah, after that, again, I joined in May 2019 last year. So at that time, I report some information about Myanmar, but till at that time, we don't have the official. We don't. Okay, now I can share, I think.
Yes, you can share. Yeah. And after that, I'll have a few words from the admins to conclude your presentation, but let's carry on from the Myanmar, please. We can see your nice picture for the May 2019, yes?
Yeah, so at the first time, I joined in the 2018 for the GEAN meeting. Then in the November, we signed the MOU with the Jeju and IEVE Organizing Committee and UIT to foster research. And 2019, May last year, I also joined the GEAN meeting again. That's our memories last year. So after that, we officially registered MIVA in our at the government. So in November, we can register in 2019 November. So after that, we plan in December or January 2020 to have the MIVA, the inaugural meeting. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have to postpone until now. We cannot have that kind of meeting yet. So we the Mr. Wu, the Secretary General of KEA, is helping us, and we consult with him how to do that inaugural meeting. So that we are going to invite the more members to actively participate in our association. So currently we are talking with the other partners like Myanmar Renewable Energy Association and also the Myanmar Green Building Association to make the more effective and efficient government policy to some rules and regulations and guidelines of the government agency. So now that we are talking about the MIRA, about the solar power charging point at the national highway and also setting up the charging point at the Yangon region. So they are also pursue the government agency and to do such kind of way together. And also with the MIVA, we are also talking about the green car park in the modern commercial building and also charging point. They have to put in the floor minimum 2 park in the regulations. So they will also have the same rules and regulation for the modern commercial building in the regulations, and also to have the charging point at the public multi-storage car parking, something like that. So that's currently we are talking about with some other partners how to do the some government policy rules and regulation and to get the some tax incentive like other country. Yeah. So now that in Myanmar, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, Myanmar also very fast to move the digital transformation. So they are very popular online shopping and also the delivery service right now. So I got the very good idea from the Dr. Kim from the ADV presentation. I have learned a lot from all of you, and I think delivery service using the EV bicycle may be very effective for them. Yeah. So that's current the situation in our MIVA, and we have to do many things. And I want all of your collaboration and your help, to make more active and make to have the same good policies in government agency rules and regulation. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Okay, I think, Mr. Edmund, you might still have a few more words to finishing your presentation, isn't
Okay,
it? Yes?
sorry for the interruption. What's the last slide that I was able to? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you very clearly.
Okay. Okay, I'll start with here. I would just like to mention the officially registered in 2020, even during this time of pandemic, the Asian Federation of Electric Vehicle Association, or AFEBA, wherein EVAP, EVAS, EVAM, and EVAT are founding members of this Asian Federation of Electric Vehicle Association. We registered here under Securities and Exchange Commission to have it formalized during 2017 event that happened here in the Philippines. Now we are trying to make an encouragement and facilitate an exchange of information between members. And we would like to entice members such as Myanmar, Cambodia, Indonesia, and others to join us for a collaboration and cooperation with the international bodies and to promote the transfer of new technology and to collectively represent industry players' views with the government and to support regulatory alignment on the EV standards and to foster cooperation by forging possible joint ventures and to help EV industry players in the ASEAN market to explore market opportunities, and then to carry out training, education, and publicity programs. Exchange student programs is one of our programs that we're working at, and act as source of relevant information to continue and sustain the establishment of our industry. In summary, electric vehicle fleet and offerings in the Philippines has been increasing, but the right set of incentives and policies are needed to boost adoption. And the efforts of the Senate EV bill that I mentioned before, and the LTO EV guidelines and the standard developments are underway. And in the adoption in the country has been anchored mostly on the public utility vehicle modernization, Department of Energy's e-trike program, and then lately pushed to develop and promote EV solutions in the logistics sector. And collaboration is the key, not only with ASEAN, with other countries as well, to form one avenue, one direction to make it as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We still have one more speaker from the Vietnam. Tuan, are you ready to give a few words?
Yeah.
Please.
Hello. I will try to share my screen first. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes, we can see yours.
Okay, very good. I will make it the full screen. Okay, yeah. So let me talk some updated electric vehicle development in Vietnam. So this presentation is prepared by me and from Hanoi University of Science and Technology and Mr. Sim In Bo, Vegarex Hanoi Company Limited, located in Hanoi. The content of my talk include three parts. So the first would be the Vietnam transport and electric vehicles updates, then the electric vehicle policy and regulation update, and finally some conclusion and outlook. let's say that the car annual rate in Vietnam is quite high now, 13.3% annual rate. In the average of the transport mean annual rate of 6.5%. And in this year, the number of motorcycles is about 40 millions, and 2 millions are e-bike and e-motorbike. However, the number of cars is only 3.5. That's why you can see that the annual growth rate of cars, passenger cars, is very high. And it is shown in this graph that, that in the transport, on-road transport sectors, motorcycle dominate the market. Right now, with the share of motorcycle is more than 90%. And it is aimed that in 2030, the number of motorcycle will share only from about 80%. And for the electric cars and buses, it is recently announced that 10 routes of e-buses in Hanoi and 5 routes of e-buses in Ho Chi Minh City is going to be operated in the end of this year, with about 200 e-buses, and the operation, the implementation company would be the VinFast, a part of Vingroup. And about the car industry in Vietnam, in 2019, the number of cars sold in Vietnam is approaching 400,000, and about less than half of that is produced domestically. And for the sustainable development, recently announced by World Bank in 2019, in a report on the pathway to low carbon transport in Vietnam, the electric vehicles is contributing a lot to the CO2 reduction, or let's say the greenhouse gas reductions for sustainability. So in 2030, the electric motorcycle will reach about 30% of the in-use. And electric cars will reach 5% of sales in 2025 and 33% in 2030. And the electric buses will reach 10% in sales during 2020-2030. I'm very happy that we initiate the e-buses earlier than private electric cars. So it will make the awareness of people on using the public transportation means before we change with the mass production in the electric cars. And in Vietnam, the VinFast and VinBus under Vingroup are emerging as the leading company for EV productions. And in 2020, 4 models of electric motorbike and 1 model of electric bus and 2 models of electric cars are aiming to produce. And right now, let's say model of electric motorbike and electric bus already introduced to the Vietnam market. VinFast is also aiming to produce 500,000 electric cars and 1 million of electric e-scooter annually in 2025, and producing at least 3,000 electric buses operating by VinBus in the 5 major cities of Vietnam. Another player in the two-wheelers, electric motorcycles, is YIT from China established the factory in Bajiang province, which is about 200 kilometers from, about 100 kilometers from Hanoi. Came to operation in last year, end of last year, and aim to produce about 200,000 e-motorbike a year and increase to 500,000 units in 3 years. VinFast is also investing in battery manufacturing factories and established battery scrapping system nationwide. You may know from the news that yesterday the vice president of Samsung visited Vietnam, and less than many experts said that there would be a new factory for battery producing in Vietnam in cooperation with VinFast and Samsung. State-owned Petro-Vietnam Oil Corporation signed an MOU with VinFast to aim to launch about 30,000 to 50,000 charging stations nationwide by 2020. And at this moment, I would say that there are about more than thousands of swapping battery and charging stations for motorbike established by VinFast nationwide. And EV, I will say that EV policy must go together with renewable energy policy. And Vietnam has boosted its renewable energy generation capacity by about 100,000, reaching 5,000 megawatts by the end of 2019 compared to the level of 2013. So currently, the solar power of Vietnam occupy 44% by the ASEAN solar power capacity. So let's say that renewable power generation is the sustainable sources for electric vehicles. And about the policies, for national regulation for e-bike and e-scooter implementation, and 12 national technical standards for EVs has been adopted in April 2020. But I would say that there is no regulation for four-wheelers EV adopted in Vietnam at this moment. So we still have to try a lot. And very important that Decree number 40, released in 2019, provide the policy guidelines for support low carbon vehicles. And very recently, Decree number 57, let's say, supplementing and amending the previous decree on export tariffs, preferential import tariffs, list of commodities, and absolute tax rates, compound tax, and non-quota import duties would be very good for EV development. And yeah, let me go to some summarize and outlook. And for the policy and promotions, I would say that several small and single research programs have been conducted, and I'm happy to know that IDB also support for the EV development in Vietnam. However, no regulation for electric cars, passenger and commercial cars have been adopted in Vietnam, although we already produced some technical standards for the EV. No national development plan for EV at this moment, but I am the team leader for a new project on study of electric mobility development in Vietnam. It is a project in the framework of NDC Transport Initiative for Asia, sponsored by JISS. And we hope that in the end of this year, the final report from this project will be released so that we will, let's say, draft a roadmap for e-mobility in Vietnam, and also aim to produce a set of criteria for e-mobility cities for Vietnam. And the charging infrastructure, only some pilot charging station is produced for cars. No national plan for network development, and VinFast is now heading for these issues. Yeah, and the car domestic production and assembly, I would say that VinFast and Taco are domestic champions on commercial cars and EV productions. And Hyundai, Toyota, Honda are producing EVs to Vietnam markets, introducing EV to Vietnam market as well, with some selected models like Hyundai Kona EV, Toyota Corolla Cross, and Honda P6, the motorcycles. More investment is required for EV production and use. And for the Vietnam EV forums, it is already mentioned by GEAN report before, and we also aim to establish the Vietnam Electric Vehicle Association as well. I would say that the process to apply for establishment of EV association in Vietnam is very tough. However, we already complete the documents and send it, and let's say got many reviews from the Ministry of Industry and Planning, Planning and Investments. And we hope that in some months, the first document will be approved, and then that document will be sent to Ministry of Internal Affairs for the next reviewing and approval. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Tuan. Oh, thanks very much for all the participants. We still have 8 minutes left, and I would like to use this opportunity to raise 2 issues. First of all, we now have Dr. Kim from the ADB, and GEAN is planning to have a small assessment with the ADB for next 6 months. I'll be leading this assessment, and I would like to explain you for this assessment a little bit. We need everybody's sort of help from each countries, and what we're planning to do is that there's a 5 main scope of assessment work. First one is establish network of collecting EV policies. Second one is develop EV policy items to be surveyed. Third one is prepare a common template. Fourth one is conduct a policy survey. Final one is to deliver survey result, which means we're going to carry out to summarize EV policies around our network. That we're going to actually make a small paper in the name of the GEAN, and also collaborating with the ADB. And I might gonna contact you a lot to ask you many questions on this assessment, because I have to lead this assessment. So please don't be surprised if I email you about asking very many questions on it. But we now have Dr. Kim is here from ADB. So Dr. Kim, do you have any expectations or outcomes for this small assessment that we can do it together in the name of the GEAN?
Well, I realize that ADB is working with the government mostly, so we are not quite aware the development from the private sector or anything about industrial development much, because we can collect, ADB can collect government policies, decrees, but there are a lot behind it in the activities. So if GEAN can collect not only the government policy and the private sector development, what's going on, would be good information to share with the different developing countries. Also, ADB is designated as a organization for the e-mobility platform for Asia and Pacific funded by the GEF fund. So I would like to take advantage of this gathering and GEAN workshops as a part of that platform together, bring the people together, learn from each other, and monitor the progress of the electric vehicles in different countries would be part of the ADB's work with the GEF. So I expect everyone's contribution and the participant today can contribute to the report. And also I mentioned ADB conducted EV study, scoping study for 25 cities. I can supply those reports if any country representative wants to have one, because I realized when we produce the report, we send it to the government, also any counterpart in the countries, mostly government offices, but it never reaches out to the people actually developing, working on the electric vehicles. So I can offer that report to any participants upon request. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. So my target is our next meeting in December. We're going to explain more detailed activities and timeline, how we can collaborate together. So as Dr. Kim has mentioned, hopefully we can have everybody's opinions on it. So this is a very meaningful project, because this is first actual product the GEAN member can actually produce as a paper. So I'll be very honored to carry on this project, but I still need a lot of your support and help. Otherwise, I don't think I can do this. So please be aware of my email. My name is Seo Kim again, S-E-O-K-I-M. So I'll contact you more often. Also, I'd like to discuss one more topic, which is according to the Ali's presentation. At the end of the Ali's presentation, he actually briefly mentions about Southeast Asia's EV trend outlook for the 2025 and 2030. But I think it's a really great opportunity to have an actual voice from the audience, because this is what you can see the numbers here, but the actual voice can be a little bit different. Do we have any comment or questions on this statistic from the participant? So Ali can also able to answer. Well, if there's no comment, that means Ali did a very perfect question.
Sorry,
okay, yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Tuan from Vietnam. Look at this picture. It is very positive for Vietnam in the EV development. I would ask Ali if where the data can you obtain for to show in this table. Do you understand my question?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So what I should explain is, if I go back, and this will be a very, very quick explanation. The way we do the modeling is we look at the short-term developments from bottom up. And this one is just for passenger vehicles, but we do similar work for two-wheelers, commercial vehicles, and buses. So we try to collect as much real data as we can on what has been the actual sales trend so far, and what are the incoming policies, as well as company targets. So some of the ones that you and your colleagues earlier shared around the different countries. We aggregate all these information and then build up a short-term outlook. That short-term outlook actually goes out to 3 years. Then beyond that, what we do is we have our own forecast around where do we see battery prices going. And then using the battery prices, we model the economics of electric vehicles across all the different modes, from two-wheelers to cars and buses and commercial vehicles. Then we use a typical technology diffusion adoption model, which is driven by economics, which gives you these sort of like S-curves, which Dr. Kim also showed different versions of it earlier. For the diffusion modeling, for the vehicles that individual consumers buy, we only look at the upfront economics. So we just look at the price tag of the electric motorcycle or the car. For the ones that are targeted at commercial operators or municipal buses, then we look at the total cost of ownership. So we take into account what how Dr. Kim was explaining in terms of the electricity price versus the fuel price. And then we come up with the global results. For ASEAN markets, the one challenge that I think you're alluding to, one is like the current data availability is somewhat limited. To be fair, as you shared, for example, for Vietnam, electric two-wheeler sales, we could get some good data. Passenger vehicles is a little bit trickier. We got some data that we could have some confidence. And then what this table is showing you is essentially, if you look at what the global numbers are, which is the top, and then we compare them with what do we expect on the individual country level in ASEAN, how do they stack up relative to the global number? So hopefully that explanation clarifies how the model is done. The short term is very much, so between now and 3 years, we do take into account from a bottom-up perspective. Beyond that 3-year angle, we try to primarily look at economics. We do, when we look at the addressable market, we do also look at challenges with charging infrastructure. So we have a way of adjusting for that, particularly in markets where consumers park the vehicles on the road. So you will need to make sure there's some sort of a way of street charging. But I'll stop here if there are further questions. Very happy to address.
Okay, thank you, Ali. I'm happy because, I'm also a member of the national consultant team for the World Bank project that, with the report that we released already at the end of last year. And in my presentation, there is also one chart talking about the EV development in 2030 and something, very, let's say, matched very well with your estimation. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thanks very much, Ali, and thanks very much, Tuan. I think it's really great to have both a comment from the actual person in charge and the person who made the numbers. We couldn't hear Thailand voice this time because Krista couldn't actually join until the last at the end of the session. But I'm sure we'll have another opportunity in our next meeting to have a Thailand voice as well. Now I'm going to pass on to my mic to Chairman Kim to have final words. Thanks very much.
네, 장기간 고생하셨습니다. 또한 지금 뉴욕 야코보 회장님은 밤 12시입니다. 또 코펜하겐 덴마크는 06시고요. 이건 코로나19도 우리의 이런 EV 에너지를 이기지 못할 것 같습니다. 저희들 극복해서 조만간 대면에서 만나서 함께 하도록 할 것을 약속드리고요. 오늘 블룸버그 알리 우리 1회 때부터 전기차 패밀리로 글로벌 패밀리들하고 네트워킹 해주고 지속적으로 함께 해주셔서 먼저 감사하다는 말씀드리고요. 특히 오늘 김성균 차장이 얘기한 ADB 아시아개발은행 김기준 박사님께서 우리한테 큰 선물을 주셨습니다. 아주 작지만 시드머니로 우리 개발도상국하고 우리 ADB하고 우리 그 세계 전기차 협회 진이 협력해서 개발도상국을 위주로 전기차 산업과 앞으로 지속 가능한 리서치와 연구 개발 또 지속 가능한 협력 비즈니스를 만드는데 자그마한 과제를 주셨습니다. 그래서 이것을 우리 세계 전기차 협의회 회장단들한테 자그마한 시드지만 시드머니를 n분의 1로 해서라도 조금씩 보태서 함께 그 한 단계 한 단계 나갔으면 한다는 생각을 갖고 김기준 박사님 하여간 감사드립니다. 처음부터 지금 7회까지 항상 하고 있고요. 태국을 갈 때나 인도네시아를 갈 때나 베트남을 갈 때나 항상 오셔서 또 격려도 해주시고요. 또 우리가 이제 오늘 그 중점적으로 이렇게 얘기하는 과정에도 많은 회장단들이 해야 되는데 못했습니다. 오늘 태국도 오셨고 또 덴마크나 스위스 또 부탄, 라오스, 동티모르, 몽골 또 네팔 같은 데도 지금 들어와 오셨는데 톡 한 번 못하고 나갈 수밖에 없는 이런 일들 때문에 우리가 오늘 법무법인 세종의 황성익 변호사님이 우리 이제 전기차 패밀리가 됨으로써 우리가 이제 그 세계 전기차 협회 진을 어떤 형태로 지속 가능하게 발전해 시켜 가야 되느냐. 카본 프리 아일랜드 가파도 또 카본 프리 아일랜드 뉴욕의 롱 아일랜드 하와이 오키나와 이런 그 섬들의 네트워크들을 묶어서 그린 아일랜드 노력을 하다가 전기차 엑스포를 함께 하고 계십니다. 그래서 이런 부분들을 좀 더 이제는 좀 글로벌 패밀리들하고 이제는 체계를 잡고 시스템을 갖춰서 할 수밖에 없는 이제는 세계 조직이 된 겁니다. 그래서 세계에서 올해 코로나19로 모든 글로벌 행사, 한 5개국 이상 하는 행사들이 다 취소하고 포기됐습니다. 근데 우리만 세계에서 유일하게 글로벌 행사 중에 유일하게 하는 그런 엑스포입니다. 그래서 올해 12월 달에도 좀 더 고도화시켜서 여러분들이랑 함께 하겠다는 말씀을 드리고요. 그러고 또 이제 한 가지 더, 이제 두 가지를 더 말씀을 드리면 올해 이 세계 전기차 보급에 기여한 공로로 지난해는 닛산과 BYD가 수상을 했습니다마는 수상 어워드를 올해는 블룸버그의 알리 또 GM의 메리바라 CEO 그리고 르노그룹의 진로만 회장님이 수상하기로 해서 함께 하기로 했었는데 여러 가지 코로나 여건상 대면하지 못해서 이 내용을 12월 9일 날 어떤 형태로 드려야 될지 그 그룹의 코리아 대표님한테 드려야 될지 함께 고민해서 정할 거고요. 그리고 내년 5월 달에 제8회 엑스포 때도 이제는 세계적인 전기차 보급에 기여한 도시나 국가나 기관이나 또 기업이나 이걸 여러분들께서 회장님들이 추천해 주시면 또 우리가 심사위원회를 열어서 선정위원회에서 결정을 하도록 하겠습니다. 이건 1월 달까지 여러분들께 재차 공모를 할 거고요. 또 여러분 말씀하셨던 지금 우리가 대면을 못하니까 이렇게 EV 매거진을 세계에서 유일하게 만들었습니다. 한국에서는 매달 5,000부씩 발간해서 우리 전기차 패밀리들하고 공유를 하고 있고요. 이것을 웹진으로 이제는 웹진으로 바꿔서 50여 개의 국가하고 공유하고 소통하고 있습니다. 그래서 회장님들도 각국에 좋은 전기차 관련한 또 카본 프리 아일랜드 스마트 그리드 관련한 우리 정체성과 맞는 그런 뉴스나 행사나 정보가 있으면 사무국으로 보내주시면 저희들이 글로벌 패밀리들하고 소통하는데 적극적으로 할 거고요. 또 지금 쭉 이어지는 베트남 전기차 협회가 이제는 창설 직전입니다. 미얀마도 창설을 했습니다. 그거를 세레모니를 못해서 그랬는데 이런 게 우리 글로벌 전기차 패밀리들이 함께한 결과물이 아닌가 생각하고요. 이게 3년 전에 인도네시아 밀리오 요도도 회장님이 창설한 인도네시아도 또 테이프를 끊고 메이드 인 인도네시아 제품을 만들기 위해서 또 창설도 했습니다. 이런 것들을 우리 전기차 패밀리들이 함께 한다는 그런 에너지가 오늘도 느끼셨다고 보이고요. 마지막으로 다시 한번 우리 황성익 변호사님이 얘기했던 세계 전기차 협의회는 누구 개개인이나 한국의 전유물이 아닙니다. 우리는 벌써 32개국의 따뜻한 패밀리들이 EV를 가지고 앞으로의 비즈니스를 어떤 식으로 함께 하느냐. ADB 김기준 박사님이 얘기했던 함께 더불어 가는데 개발도상국 위주로 메이드 인 자국산을 좀 만들 수 있도록 우리가 힘을 도와주고 함께 하자. 이 부분들이기 때문에 그런 내용들도 이제는 소통의 창구들이 만들어졌기 때문에 계속 의견을 주시면 저희들이 함께 하겠다는 약속을 드리고요. 오늘 특히 고생한 우리 세계전기차협회 총회에 우리 자장을 한 최용철 교수님 한번 손들어 주십시오. 네, 하여간 감사드리고요. 또 김성균 대표님 손 좀 들어주세요. 여기 자장하고 준비하시느냐고 고생했습니다. 오늘 여기 다 함께 스크린 영상을 한번 쭉 돌려주시면 한번 돌려주세요. 영상을. 영상 카메라가 좀 이렇게 식구들 여기 배석한 식구들을 한번 비춰주세요. 크로스로. 예, 그래서 좀 화면에 띄워주시고요. 오늘 덴마크 말레이시아 댄 회장님이나 미얀마의 소산다 회장님 또 미얀마의 자동차 산업 협회장인 코코양 회장님도 화면에 나와 있고요. 여기 동티모르의 회장님도 지금 나왔다고 하는데 화면에는 안 보여서 좀 양해 드리겠습니다. 그래서 우리 쭉 얼굴 좀 보시고 오늘은 마무리를 이 정도로 해야 될 것 같습니다. 야코보 회장님도 12시가 넘어서 지쳤을 것 같습니다. 그래서 우리 서로 박수 치고 다시 한번 이제 자주 이런 내용으로 소통할 수 있기 때문에 이제 대면하지 못하면 비대면으로 자주 보자고요. 자, EV 패밀리 우리 EV 하면 패밀리로 우리 마무리하면 어떻겠습니까? 자, 아르가 회장님, 후안 회장님, 야코보 회장님, EV 하면 패밀리, 오케이? 자, 우리 EV 선창훈 우리 이계명 학장님이 하겠습니다.
반갑습니다. EV
패밀리. 아이고 다들 고생하셨습니다. 네. 이제 영상